Los BandTitos! Yeah.
May voicing pa. Oh.
Oh, ako lang di vocalist dito eh.
Howdy, guys. Hi. How's
Howdy.
it going? Welcome to the first episode of Los BandTitos.
Yes.
Welcome to everybody who's listening. My name is Henry, and it's my utmost pleasure to be sitting here next to two of the sexiest individuals these islands have ever produced. My fellow BandTitos, Martin
Hello.
and Miguel. What's
Yes.
up, my friends? Why are we doing this?
Yun, ang pinakamagandang tanong.
Why are we doing this? Why are we putting ourselves in the line of fire?
So guys, dun sa mga nakikinig sa amin ngayon, itong podcast na to, huwag nung asahan na parang maging documentary na po sa i-explain namin yung mga topics na sasabihin na. Ang mangyayari lang dito guys, parang lang to, parang tambay lang ng mga tropa, ganun. Yung kung paano kayo mag-usap, ganyan lang, chill lang.
Chill lang.
Basically, yung thoughts namin are very fertile. Tapos gusto na namin siya i-harvest ba?
Oo eh.
Oh, kasi pinapakain na namin yung thoughts namin sa mga friends namin. Oh, wow.
Minsan kausap na namin yung sarili namin.
But now we decided that we'd also like to get our thoughts out there, engage in meaningful discussions with not just ourselves but with people who are listening to us. Maybe even have guests. Basically, gusto lang namin i-spread yung excitement that we have. And we'd like to share that excitement with
Mga topics na
people who are listening.
mga topics sa trip namin. Kumbaga, i-share namin. Ganun.
First episode.
Yes.
Kind of
Pilot.
nerve-wracking.
One word.
Pasensyahan nyo na muna kami.
Ay.
So yun. Yung future plans nga ganun, sinabi nga ni Henry na sa future magkakaroon ng mga guests, tas parang mangyayari niyan. Q&A ganun, parang i-interviewin namin yung guests, tapos dun lang magre-revolve yung mga topics ganyan. Kung ano man yung expertise ng guest na na in-invite namin. Anyway, so maliban dun sa may guest, yung mga episodes na kami lang, yun, may kanya-kanya kaming topics, ganyan, pag-uusapan natin. Tapos kayo, iwan nyo lang sa comments or kung ano yung mga gusto nyong pag-usapan namin in the future. Tapos kung ano rin yung tingin nyo doon sa mga topics na pinag-usapan namin. Yan.
Please be nice,
Sensitive kami.
Sensitive kami.
Just as a little backstory lang between the three of us. Me, Migs, and Martin, we met each other, or we got to know each other through music, through our shared love of music. Really hard, hindi dicks pero hardcore stuff. Hardcore music. We love that stuff, and we realize we have a lot of other things in common that we like talking about outside of music, and so that's what we'd like to share with you. So, I mean, we may have musical topics, although you can expect that a lot of the things we'll be talking about are really cool,
Geeky stuff.
geeky stuff like science-related, gaming-related. Mga things that we find exciting in the world that we'd like to share with you. But before we get started, I'd like to make sure our listeners understand a few things. So please, us, the Los BandTitos, are, just like what Mig said earlier, we are by no stretch of the imagination experts on each of the topics we'll be talking about.
Yes.
Okay. However, we do have a decent enough understanding of these topics to adequately bring them to your attention. So that's really what we're trying to do.
Yep.
We're bringing them to your attention, and to try and ignite some kind of curiosity in you. To dig deeper, of course. And that's the same kind of excitement that got us to do this podcast in the first place.
Yep.
In other words, we're here to reveal these topics that excite us. They may not always be new or fresh. Sometimes mga topics namin will be things that are already out there, already well known.
Yeah.
Pero baka under the radar lang, or these are things that may not have interested you before. Or they may even have been things that you never heard of. So you'll be hearing them from us first. ito na yung legal jargon na.
Tsaka yung mga topics din na parang gusto namin marinig yung opinion din ng ibang tao. So ito yung way namin para makarinig ng boses ng ibang tao na labas sa circle namin or ayun, parang mas malawak na audience.
Get an outsider's perspective.
Ganun.
So please remember, the thoughts and opinions that we express here as Los BandTitos are purely our own, and they're not representative of any of the entities or organizations that we have been, are now, or will be affiliated with in the future. This is our own take on things. Also, we're not trying to sell you anything.
Sarili namin kalokohan to. Kaya
Please, our topics
kami lang to.
are not endorsements by. Hindi siya endorsements.
Pero may single kaming bago ilalabas.
Yun. Oo. Punta kayo sa Doom Shop, please. Party shirts.
Hindi, yun din. Sa future naman, magpapatugtog din kami ng mga trip naming local artists. Ganun.
Yeah.
Para rin, tribute din sa music, sa music scene.
OPM.
Yeah, for those of us who are, for those of you who are listening to us in hopes of getting some musical input from us, then yes, down the road for sure, we'll have some musical guests, musical topics. But yeah, I mean, it'll be very varied, very varied. Just to continue, so I told you earlier, we're not trying to sell anything. These are not endorsements. But most of all, and this is the most important, I mean, you must not. You cannot use any of the things we talk about here as a source of professional advice. Please.
For sure.
Professional, whether that be legal, medical, scientific, financial, or love advice, please.
You might die.
You will most definitely die. Please, always do your own research. And consult with real experts before believing your handsome BandTitos. Just like any responsible individual. Okay? That's about it. So please, exercise your right to be a critical thinker.
Yes.
Yan. Okay, so that's out of the way. Dami kong iniisip na parang topic starter. Yung gusto ko i-model yung boses ko kay Arthur. Sa Red Dead Redemption. Si Arthur Morgan. But let's get the ball rolling. Take 20. So, yes. What do you think of 2020? No. That's a bad question. That was my topic. What do you think? Parang write-off na yung 2020 na year. No?
Wala.
Can we say that sa official records of history, galing sa 2019, diretso na lang 2021.
Oh, parang gano'n na nangyari. Or
not included.
January, February, tas December. Tas 2020. 3 buwan lang yung last year.
Yeah, man. What a bad year it's been. I mean, may mga na-achieve naman tayo ng mga personal highs. Yeah. We've all shared in a few blessings this year. We can't exactly call it the worst year, diba? Maybe
may silver lining naman.
Maybe World War I and World War II were even worse than this year. The Spanish flu was even worse than this year. But it was a bad year, and then I guess one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast with you guys, so we could talk about some really good things that might have happened this year, or might make the year better for us. And one of the really awesome things I've been following, not just 2020, but I guess it started in 2019. May mga leaks and may mga hints na, and this is really exciting for me. And I was like, oh shit, this is gonna blow up. 2020 is gonna be amazing. Was the next gen consoles?
Hell
yes. Here we go.
PS5, Xbox Series X.
Yes,
Soul Wars.
Yun na lang yung pinaka-scientific breakthrough ng 2020.
Ako tahimik lang ako, PC Master Race.
Oh no. I can't argue with you there.
Comment lang kayo dyan, PC Master Race.
I can't argue with you there. Pero may I would like to connect to the PC Master Race somehow.
Okay.
Kasi I still am a PC guy.
Nasa iyo pa yung
Oh,
yung virus.
that will that will never go away yung aspect na PCs can do everything. PCs are the most powerful. But yeah, the reason why I'd like to bring these next gen consoles to the table is because I think now more than ever, it's now making use of technologies in the PC space
Ah,
na we're breakthrough technologies. Kasi dati, if correct me if I'm wrong, like the PS3s, the Xbox Ones, the Xbox 360s, the years na na-release sila, they weren't, you wouldn't even consider them competitors for PCs of
Separate entity sila.
of that year. You wouldn't even consider them on par, speed-wise, technological-wise, performance-wise. But this year, there's a large leap in terms of
Medyo
performance.
lumapit na ng onte.
Very
Totoo,
large leap.
totoo.
Initially kasi, gusto ko siya maging comparison. So that was my initial goal. I wanted us to compare. I wanted us to decide on what might be the best buy. But then I realized later on, after going through all the notes and the reviews and everything, it's a tough decision. Hindi siya black and white. It's not cut and dried.
Totoo.
In terms of processing power, yung architecture ng processors ng Series X and PS5 at the point of announcement last year, 2019, they were actually equal to the best AMD processors at the time, which is a first because yung PS3 when it came out, it wasn't anywhere near any of the best processors of the time. And that goes for the graphics as well. Like this, at the point of announcement last year, I think it was last year, they had graphics power that was almost double or had
last gen.
this is what I heard. Yung graphics card power at that time in 2019, they had 20 plus compute units. The best AMD Radeon card, or perhaps even the best NVIDIA card at the time, had 20 to 30 compute units in the GPU. But when they announced the Xbox and the PS5, the Xbox has 52 compute units and the PS5 has 36.
Okay.
So at that time, they were actually a bit better spec than comparable PCs. Hindi ako makaklaim na, I can't claim that I was like an early adopter of consoles kasi I only started playing consoles Xbox One.
Okay.
I had my first console, Xbox One. And before that, totally PC talaga ako.
PC
Oo.
talaga.
Nung sinabi ko nga kay Trevor, friend of mine, sabi ko, Trev, naglaro ka pa ng PC? Sabi niya, minsan daw nag-Warcraft pa siya, Warcraft 3, Starcraft 2, o ganyan. Okay.
Old school.
So sabi ko, naglaro kasi ako ng Mass Effect Andromeda sa Xbox One. So, one word lang yung reply niya, traitor.
Traitor. Masterize.
But I mean, going back to the specs, grabe yung specs nila. Imagine, processor is a Zen 2 architecture, which is current. Yun yung pinaka highest end ngayon ng
Before
AMD.
ni-release nitong last month yung 5000 series.
Zen
Yun
3.
yung, Zen 3.
Zen 3.
So yun nga, parang ano pa rin siya.
At
Top of the
that
line.
point, it
Sa
was
taas
it
pa rin.
was top of the line, the Zen 2 architecture. And the Zen 3, yes, it's pretty awesome and they're giving Intel real competition na ngayon.
Oo, sunog yung Intel.
The Zen 2 and Zen 3, hindi ganun kalaki yung difference in performance between the two. And hindi siya, well, I'm saying the gap between the Zen 2 and the Zen 3 is not the same as the gap between the Jaguar and the comparable. Kasi yung Jaguar yung processor
yung sa
ng
PS3,
Yes.
PS3, Xbox 360.
So they're really paying attention but to the processor architecture. They're trying to keep it on par. And then
Just to be clear, AMD rin yung gumagawa ng graphics and processor units ng mga consoles. Starting yata ng Xbox 360, ganun-ganun sila na eh.
yeah. Actually, I have no idea how much memory my Xbox One S has. But I'm sure it's not a lot. But yung PS5 and Xbox, they come with 16 gigabytes of memory,
Yep.
which is basically a gaming laptop.
Tama.
Pag may 16 gigs of memory ka na,
So,
you're on the threshold of being a true gamer.
Yep.
And and I thought that was pretty awesome. They're paying attention to that kind of stuff. They're making it a real gaming environment for people. And yeah, yung
Accessibility talaga yung consoles eh.
Yes,
Yan.
sir.
it's I guess I don't know, but maybe they're trying to reach out more to kasi console when you say consoles, casual siya, di ba? It's casual gaming. It's couch gaming in front of your TV. And maybe and you can tell when they do their presentations, yung mga marketing presentations ng Xbox and AMD, they're zeroing in on the specs.
Kumbaga pang masa talaga siya eh. Parang kasi pag PC parang kailangan kahit papaano may konting technical knowledge eh. Kasi lalo na kung per part ka bumili, parang kailangan alam mo yung part na to compatible sa ganito. Eh yung console puta isang bilihan na lang yan eh.
Pangtamad.
Pantamad eh parang kung gusto mo maglaro, bilhin mo na lang, laro ka na agad.
Convenience.
And with the Xbox kasi, this is my opinion as an Xbox user. Yung PS4 came out with the Xbox One, just the Xbox One. The PS4 blew the Xbox One away in terms of performance. It blew it away, man. And then, so ang ginawa ng Xbox, they came out with the Xbox One S and the One X. And then, yung PS4 naman, they came back with the PS4 Pro. I have the Xbox One S, which is supposed to be better than the Xbox One. But the PS4 is still better than the Xbox One S. It's still better. I know because I play both. Yung kasama ko sa bahay, may PS4 siya.
Tama.
I have the Xbox One S. He plays Witcher on his PS4. Hindi Pro, just PS4 lang. And then I play Witcher on my Xbox One S. Everything is smoother, faster. Graphics are better on the PS4. Whereas on the... I mean, okay lang naman yung... I enjoy the game, but you can tell... Your eye can tell there's a clear difference between performance.
Quality.
So, panalo talaga yung PS4 in that aspect. And I think Xbox has really had to pick up their game.
Yep.
And maybe that's one reason why they're zeroing in on the specs and really announcing it, saying, hey, you know what? We have 2 teraflops more than the PS5.
Mas malakas yung console namin.
We have a more integrated architecture compared to the PS5, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
Pero I think their plan is really coming together. Kasi now more than ever, we can see that the Xbox and the PlayStation are mas pata siya.
Halos.
Yeah. Okay, let me just go through a few things here where hindi sila patas. And the first
Loading
thing,
na nga yung naging usapan.
Grabe.
the first thing is the controller.
Yung...
Baka controversial to PlayStation players ba?
Okay.
But because I've used the DualShock, nagamit ko na yung DualShock sa PS4. Nagamit ko na rin yung Xbox na controller. The Xbox controller sa previous gen was way better. Just for me,
Okay.
it felt fatter in the hand. Feel up talaga siya. And I like the displaced toggles.
Okay.
Displace yung toggles
Thumb-
yung left
thumbsticks,
nasa taas,
Tama.
yung right nasa baba. And then, so the D-pad was in between. Mas gusto ko yung arrangement na yun for my thumbs.
Okay.
The DualShock works, okay din siya, but somehow the Xbox felt
Positioning nung
more ergonomic.
Oo.
But the PS5, siguro, PlayStation realized we have to do a complete shift in our controller design. And then they succeeded. I'm really liking the new controller sa PS5. Grabe.
Totoo.
Haptic triggers and yung when you pull your bow and arrow,
Yung R2.
yung resistance and everything.
Ah.
Tapos sabi nila yung vibration motors or the haptic feedback is really top notch daw. Parang like when you're walking around a bumpy road, mas ma-feel mo yung
may feel mo daw.
the sensation. So Xbox went for more of the same.
Same. Pero, nag-release sila ng Elite. Nakita na yun.
Yung with changeable
Napapalitan yung
toggles.
Fuck.
Man.
Nag-start yun sa One Xbox One. Nag-release sila nun. Pwede mo palitan yung triggers, pwede mo lagyan ng ano.
Yung astig sa likod
Tapos pinalala nila yung ngayon.
Tapos may weights pa siya. Di ba may mga mabigat, magaan,
para-
may shorter, higher.
Tinarget
Yan.
nila yun
Oh,
para
man.
sa mga sa mga pro gamers.
Yan,
Yung
tama.
mga gusto nila, nakaano talaga sa feel nila yung controller.
Naastigan ako dun sa nasa likod ng controller.
Extra buttons.
Yung parang,
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
yung purpose niya is para siyang alternative sa ABXY. Para hindi ka na bumitaw dun sa
Para yung takbo mo dire-diretso
sa
lang.
right analog.
Oo.
Kasi syempre pagka may right analog, sasabihin mo sa X, A, B, Y.
Awkward
Mawawala
minsan
ka eh. Pero kung nasa likod siya, parang may
Tuloy-tuloy lang.
magagamit mo. Parang,
Yun yung masasabi ko na the PC gamers, may kinukuha din sila sa console aspect. Kasi you notice yung brother ko nga may binili siya na parang it's just a maliit na keyboard. Parang ganyan lang. Anong tawag doon, Migs?
Yung pang kasya lang siya sa kamay mo na
Pang
keyboard.
macros lang?
Oo, yun. Pang laro lang talaga siya.
Oo. And then, feeling ko ano
Parang
yun
tawag dun Pero yung sa Razer may ganun sila eh.
Oo. May ganyan siya na fit yung kamay
Parang
niya.
WASD lang, tas may
Oo.
may A, may Q, may ganun.
And then, may custom mapping siya.
Oo.
So, each key does exactly what you want it to do per game.
Perfect for MMOs.
Feeling ko, yung thing na yun, kinuha nila yun from consoles.
Kasi kung gaming lang nga naman yung gagawin mo, I mean, you don't need the other buttons. Parang kung ano lang yung madalas ginagamit. Kasi pag tinignan mo yung mga keyboard ng mga gamers, putya, wasak na yung WASD. Pero yung ibang buttons fresh pa eh. So parang tayo na hindi naman nagagamit yun. So gawa tayo ng keyboard na or keypad na pang gaming lang talaga.
Tapos yung spacebar nakatabingi na.
Oo, ganun na. Kasi left thumb yung...
tama.
Pero yung uncomfortable lang for me with the PC is like I've been playing PCs for years, shooters, RPGs, whatever you name it. Yung uncomfortable thing lang for me is the position of the mouse and the keyboard, and then sometimes like yung body ko maganyan, or yung body ko maganyan. It just doesn't like after an hour of play or 30 minutes parang
Sakit na sa katawan.
hindi ganda. Lalo na pag hindi maganda yung computer seat mo. Or yung seat mo.
Compared sa controller na pwede ka
You're on the couch, you're just lying down.
gets.
Doon ako nag-enjoy. Yung uncomfortable lang talaga sa controller is parang pangit yung first person.
Oo naman.
Yung lalo na mga first person shooters is like you could never hit anything.
Mismo.
Oh, and then
Unless araw-arawin mo siguro maglaro nun. Tayo na.
Pero hindi pa rin siya
Practice.
kasing comfortable pagka mouse eh. As in, cheat mode talaga yung mouse eh, pagdating sa FPS.
the best talaga yung mouse pag FPS. You can really aim properly. Kasi yung parang hindi naman yung mga consoles naman may auto aim. Pero nahiya ako mag-on ng auto aim. I'm not a real gamer when I turn on auto aim. Pangit naman.
What's the point?
Pero yun,
Alam
kahit
baka
yung,
may ma-offend.
Ay, sorry.
mo ko. Bakit
Sorry,
ibig
sorry.
sabihin ba nun?
pero enough for the controllers. Ito, iba din to. This is another thing where, just to review, just to go back a little bit. So, in terms of specs, we can pretty much say, this will be a little bit controversial, but we can pretty much say the PS5 and the Xbox are almost the same in terms of specs.
Sige,
So
sige.
we're going to have to look for intangibles. And one of the intangibles we just talked about was the controller. And the other one that's actually really big
Yan na.
are the games.
Yun talaga.
Yan.
Exclusive
The
games.
games, man.
Gusto ko yan.
And then when it comes down to it, as a gamer, you're there for the
For
game.
the game.
Siyempre.
You know?
Siyempre.
And sadly, the Xbox launched with no launch games. Wala siyang launch games. Well,
PS5 din naman.
may Miles Morales.
Miles Morales.
Yeah, it came out. And then Godfall came out like a few weeks later. So, but pero
kasi yung Miles, pwede mo laruin sa PS4 eh.
yes,
Kaya parang hindi ko pa rin, well, para sa akin parang
Yes,
hindi ko siya kino-consider na fully,
as a full as a total
Oo.
like launch game
na
talaga.
for next gen lang na
Oo.
putya bawal na yung mga PS4 na yan, wala na, parang ganun.
Pero may konting performance differentiation between the Miles Morales on the PS4 and the Miles Morales on the
Yung upgrade,
PS5.
diba, yung next gen upgrade.
Which what I've neglected to mention is what makes these next gen consoles next gen. So as
Frames.
as PC gamers, yung 60 frames per
frames.
second, the 60 frames per second is something that we're all used to. Di ba? Pag
You
sabihin mo
gotta have
60
them.
frames, tatawanan ka lang ng PC gamer. That's not basic na yan sa amin.
Basic yan eh.
60 FPS.
I got 240 hertz, man.
Full HD? What? I've been playing in 1440p for ages. Parang ganyan ba? And then, when I went through the notes and everything and the reviews, dun ko lang na-realize na yung Xbox One was locked at 30 frames per second.
Minsan hindi pa eh.
So, yun na yung pinaka-lowest siguro, 30 frames per second. And then that's okay.
Yun na yung lowest playable na hindi ka mababother.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, movies are in 24, 30 frames per second. That's okay. But, man, when you're playing games, you want that smooth, buttery frames per second, man.
The frames.
And di pala ginagawa ng mga consoles yun dati. But now, as another example of
Pati
consoles
resolution eh.
trying to live up to the PC standards,
Locked.
they're
sa 60.
they're trying to get locked 60. And then not only that, Xbox is even promising
Higher.
up to 120
120.
in what they call performance mode. Pero syempre depende talaga sa TV mo.
Yep.
Because like gaming monitors, 120 is almost the lowest now that you can get. A 60 frame per second or a 60 hertz monitor is an office monitor, man. Pag bili ka ng gaming monitor, matic 120 hertz na yan. 120 frames per second.
Basta banggitin mo, pang gaming, ganyan. Iisipin na agad nung dude sa store na parang, 120 hinahanap ito or up 144 usually.
144. Ano ba yung highest? 210?
May lumabas na parang 300 plus na eh. Nandun na sa ganun eh. So parang, well, para sa mga pros, sila na yung nakakapansin nun eh. Pero sa mga normal na gamers, siguro yung 144, grabe na sa mata yun. As in, orgasmic na siya.
Yun yung gusto ko ma-experience.
Orgasm.
Yes.
Tsaka yung resolution din. Diba? Kasi dati yung sa PS3 nga naalala ko, tsaka kahit sa PS4 tsaka Xbox One, naalala ko na may mga games na sinasabi nila 1080p pero pag tinignan mo talaga, hindi siya 1080p eh. May mga ganun.
Yung one of the tricks na ginagawa ng consoles is either locked frame sila and then variable resolution. So ang gawin ng processor and GPU, they will try to stay at 30 frames per second.
Visuals.
And then let's say yung console mo is an HD, so it plays in 1080p. Pero if it locks the frames at 30 frames per second, then what it does, para ma-maintain yung 30 frames per second, pag mga high-stress environments in the game, i-downscale niya yung resolution. So the resolution will go down. Baka minsan...
Lalabo bigla.
Bababa siya all the way to 720. Pero hindi mo na mapansin yun on the TV.
Pag magulo na yung nangyayari sa screen. Parang...
Pero yun yung mga tricks ng consoles. And then sometimes, if nakalock talaga yung 1080p na resolution, minsan variable frame rates naman.
Yep.
So if hindi niya kaya i-maintain yung 1080p at 30, ibababa niya 24, 26 man. Basta ma-maintain lang yung 1080. So it really depends on the strategy that the console uses.
Kasi naalala ko sa ibang PC habang hinahanap ni Henry yung yung iba kong kaibigan na naglalaro ng Destiny 2. Shoutout nga pala kay Francis Josep. Yung ibang kilala ko naglalaro, pag competitive, kunyari PvP, ganyan, yung iba ginagawa nila, nilalagay nila sa lowest setting yung visuals para parang yun nga, performance mode para yung ma-maximize yung FPS. Kumbaga maabot mo yung 144 or maabot mo yung 120. Pero yun nga, yung parang sa consoles na feeling ko kahit yung sa mga bago ngayon sa next gen sa PS5 tsaka sa Xbox Series X, parang yung performance mode feeling ko mababawasan ng onti yung visuals para ma-achieve yun. Lalo na sa pro scene kasi mas mahalaga sa mga pro players yung response time tsaka yung frames.
Yes.
Mauna ako sa'yo, makita kita, mapatay kita agad parang ganun.
So yun, going back sa Miles Morales, yung differentiation between the PS4 Miles Morales and the PS5 is yun yung sinasabi mo na kaya niya mag 60 frames sa PS5 whereas on the PS4 hindi yata siya makaabot ng 60. 30 lang yung pinaka-stable niya. And then on the PS5, upscaled siya to 4K 60. Whereas on the PS4 is not a 4K console. Yung PS4 Pro siguro.
Tama.
Pero if you're going 4K on the PS4 Pro on Miles Morales, hindi ka abot ng 60.
Hindi abot yun. Grabe graphics ng Miles Morales.
Yung weird lang is yung Xbox when they came out with the announcement and the conference and then yung pag-announce sila ng specs and what the hardware can achieve. The Xbox set specific targets talaga. Nag-promise talaga sila that 60 frames 4K was a fixed target and we can achieve that. And then we are promising on games that support it 120 frames per second if your TV supports it.
Yep.
Pero hindi na siya 60 frames. Hindi na siya 4K. 120 frames but it'll probably downscale
Bababa
to
yan,
1080. And then the other thing that the PlayStation doesn't have is 1440p. Wala 1440p ang PlayStation.
Pwede mo siyang i-play sa 1440p pero hindi yata siya mag-a-adjust. So parang weird. Sayang lang.
So it's either HD lang or 4K.
Walang...
Pero imagine, di ba, sabi mo nag-enjoy ka sa Ghost of Tsushima. And you're playing it on the PS4. Pero ang ganda na, di ba? Graphics are amazing.
Hindi yun, PS4 yun, di ba? Hindi Pro.
Hindi.
Pero grabe, ganda ng graphics, di ba? It's the same with Red Dead Redemption sa Xbox
Oh,
One
kahit
S.
Red Dead, yung ganda na eh.
Ganda ng graphics. It seems almost visual. It seems almost photographic, yung graphics niya. But that's only in 30 frames per second. May nag-post ng YouTube video, ginawa nila, yung 30 frames per second na Ghost of Tsushima. They use some kind of AI technology to make it 60 frames per second. Grabe ka smooth, Marts. Like, it's so awesome to look at Ghost of Tsushima in 60 frames. And that's what it would feel like if you played Ghost of Tsushima on the PS5.
Okay.
60 frames. Buttery smooth, man.
Yun nga eh.
Order na, pre-order na.
Siyempre, mas nag-look forward ako sa 2K. Kasi yun yung...
Yan na.
yun ang kinaka-adikan namin ni Marco.
May nakita ko na meme sa Reddit. yung sabi niya, alam mo, maganda talaga yung graphics ng PS5. Kasi sa 2K21, makikita mo na yung hair implants ni LeBron James.
Totoo naman. Tsaka grabe kasi parang kung basketball fan ka, buong buhay mo gusto mo lang na maging realistic yung mga games. Tapos sa PS5, malapit na eh. Nandun na talaga.
Grabe ba eh?
Grabe yung visuals.
So yun. So these are the intangibles at the controller, the games. One last thing. Yung Xbox, yes, wala yung launch games and the exclusives are kind of weak.
Yep.
For now.
I mean, ganda ng God of War, ganda ng Spider-Man, ganda ng Horizon Zero Dawn, ganda ng Last of Us, ganda.
Yun talaga yung kulang ng Xbox.
The exclusives on the PlayStation are really playable. You want to play it. You want to buy the PlayStation so you can play it. Yung Xbox, yes, they have Halo. I mean, love ko yung Halo
But
universe.
you can play Halo on the PC. So parang
PC.
hindi na rin siya talaga exclusive eh. Yung weird ng Xbox ngayon eh.
May Ori. Have you guys heard of Ori?
Yung Ori and the something
and the
forest.
Yeah, yun, ganda. I played it. Exclusive yun sa Xbox. Ganda. Platformer. Ganda. But we can all admit that the Xbox exclusives are kind of weak. So they're trying to make up for that by binili nila yung ZeniMax Media.
Ang dami din ng biniling studios.
And who knows, maybe in the future exclusive na yung Fallout.
Yep.
Exclusive na yung Elder Scrolls.
Skyrim.
Diba? Yun. Those would be massive games to be exclusive.
Yep.
But for now, the one thing na panglaban nila sa PlayStation game ecosystem is the Xbox Game Pass or the Microsoft Game Pass Ultimate. Which is, in my mind, a really good deal.
Yep. Hindi nga pinag-uusapan yun eh. Yun hindi ko maintindihan.
Parang, yeah, siguro, I don't know, yung Xbox marketing, at first, they were really focused on the Xbox, on the specs and everything.
Yeah, malakas to.
And then, siningit nila yung Xbox. And then, pero yung mga analysts, yung mga commentators, parang feel nila, sa tingin namin, Xbox wants to sell the subscription more than the Xbox itself.
Yep.
And it's a really good deal, Marts. Kasi, look ang yung comparable subscription service sa PlayStation is the PlayStation Plus. Diba? And then with the PS5, they came out with the collection, PlayStation Plus collection, which is 20 games.
Yata.
20 amazing games. Ganda ng games. Pero it doesn't change. The library never changes. 20 lang yun. Who knows? They might add. Pero it's just 20 games. Whereas the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is 100 games.
Pati kasi yung unang library sa Xbox na una,
Oo.
parang yung backward compatibility.
Yun, grabe din yun. The backwards compatibility of the Xbox goes all the way back to the Xbox. The original Xbox. Whereas PS...
And 60 frames yung mga dating hindi 60 frames.
And auto HDR.
Yep.
Auto HDR. So, panalo doon yung Xbox backwards compatibility.
Tama.
The game library on the subscription service is
Sulit.
awesome, man.
Yep.
100 games.
Sulit.
Tapos, nagbabago siya per month. So, imagine this month, Outer Worlds, Jedi Fallen Order. So, they're really like AAA games. And then aside from that, you get discounts. With same lang sa PS Plus. You get discounts. You get to play multiplayer online. But the thing that the PlayStation doesn't have is being able to play all those games on the PC.
Tama.
So you can play all those games on the Xbox. You can play it all on the PC. And then here's the kicker. You can play it on your Android phone.
Sa phone.
Yes. Remotely.
Doon ako na mind blown na
Ako din eh.
they're pushing game streaming.
Pero syempre yung internet mo kailangan hindi bobo. Kasi pag bobo yung net mo, wala rin. Kahit malakas PC mo at malakas yung signal mo or whatever.
May sasabihin lang ako. Yung 4G sa Pilipinas, hindi talaga 4G.
2.9.
Ano lang yan? That's HSPA plus lang yata.
Okay.
I think, but it's not real 4G because real 4G goes 100 Mbps plus.
Okay.
And we're not even hitting 1/4 of that dito sa Pilipinas. Tapos na tayo sa controller, we're done with the games, we're done with the subscription service, we went over...
Tsaka ito pala, dagdag ko lang dun sa subscriptions. Parang, isipin mo na lang kunyari, ikaw yung tipo ng gamer na konti lang talagang games na gusto mong bilhin physically. Kung ano lang talaga yung fan ka ng kunyari, Red Alert or whatever, yung mga sa mga lumang games, bibilin mo yung CD mismo. Or sa mga console players, yun nga, yung iba gusto mangolekta ng physical copies, gano'n. Pero kasi minsan may mga games na parang gusto mo lang siyang laruin pero ayaw mo bilhin yung physical copy. Okay tong subscriptions kasi isa lang yung babayaran, parang magkano lang a year. Tapos kahit anong games na gusto mong itry, pwede mong laruin eh. Hindi ka bibili ng tapos may hirapan kang ibenta sa ibang tao. So parang yun yung isang convenience na dala niya na
Super game ako sa sa ginawa nilang all digital versions ng mga new consoles. I really
Pareho, diba?
I like where they're going with this. It's ecologically friendly, diba? So you're producing less plastic.
Pero ang difference ata is parang hindi maximized yung specs yung sa all digital ng Xbox.
Yeah.
Compared dun sa
Yung
parang half
series,
power lang, diba?
yata. Basta may ganun.
even less eh. Kasi 12 teraflops yung yung X. And then 4 lang yata yung S. Something like that.
Pero 1440p yung S, yung Series S. 1440p, 120.
Pero here's the catch. It's not true 1440p. It's upscaled from HD.
Hindi siya native.
It's upscaled, man. Pero maybe that's just for the beginning. Baka mga developers will start to support
gagawan
native
nila ng
1440p.
paraan yan.
But that brings me to the real point of this topic is, so yeah, yung consoles, they're trying to live up to the PC Master Race standards, man. Feeling ko yun yung ginagawa nila lately. And then we're living in a more digital year now than we were last year.
Tama.
People are staying in their living rooms longer.
Yep.
They're doing their work from their houses. So in between meetings, they're playing the console. Maybe they want to get away from the keyboard and mouse, play the console. But they're also very aware of specs now. Hindi na sila,
Mas tech-savvy na yung mga tao.
Mas tech-savvy na yung mga tao ngayon. So, this console war is a good thing for people because we're getting more bang for our buck. And at the same time, yung mga technologies na dating alam lang ng mga PC Master Race computer builders
Ngayon alam na ng maraming tao.
It is now more in the public eye. Katulad ng SSDs.
Yung loading times, mga ganun.
Yun.
I think ito yung pinaka next gen talaga. However, PC Master Racers will laugh at you kasi ang tagal na ng SSDs.
We've been experiencing that for the past.
SSDs have been around for more than a decade, man. Siguro. Pero now that it's in the console domain, people will be like, I'm never gonna go back to plaka. I'm never gonna go back to hard disk drives. I want SSDs forever. Diba?
Kumbaga yung hard disk nga ngayon, parang ginagamit na lang siya pang storage na lang talaga. Pag kunyari, ganito, studio. Sobrang daming files. Yun, ganun na lang.
Pero
Pero main drive.
tama yung point ni Henry na para siyang yung mga World War na yun yung nag-develop ng mga technology na di natin may imagine na kaya na pala natin gawin. Diba yun din naging effect ng World War?
You just needed to kill people pala.
Yun lang eh.
Pero mamatay muna.
Para maging
pwede pala yun.
yung technology.
Pero yun yung naging effect na yun. No?
Totoo. Yun yung gusto ko i-highlight kasi for example, SSDs. Some people don't realize we've had SSDs in our phones for ages, man. SSD to eh. But just now it's coming to the spotlight kasi nasa PlayStation 5. It's sad, but it's a good thing at the same time because this will create economies of scale, meaning dahil maraming bumibili ng PlayStation 5, maraming bumibili ng Xbox, it's possible production costs will go down, manufacturing costs will go down, research and development costs. So we might be looking at better SSDs in the future. Why? Because console gamers will be I want my PlayStation 6 to have an even faster SSD.
And because of Apple.
Yes. Yun, isang bagay din yun.
Grabe yung ginawa
brand
nila.
visibility will really, tingnan mo, 5G technology has been around for a long time in Androids. Androids have had refresh rates of 120, 90 sa screens nila for ages. Pero nobody gave a damn kasi iPhones never had it.
Yep.
So iPhones or consoles are kind of like the iPhones for gaming. Another thing that the consoles will bring to the spotlight is ray tracing, and this is something I'm really excited about. It's probably the reason why I'm sad that I don't have a new console.
Soon.
Kasi gusto ko ma-experience yung ray tracing.
God rays.
But people don't realize, but ray tracing has been around for ages. Ever since Toy Story 1 yata, may ray tracing na tayo since the late 90s. Ray tracing has been an algorithm since the 60s, man. Pero we've been seeing ray tracing in CGI, in movies for a long time. Pero hindi siya real-time ray tracing, which is what computers, PCs have been able to experience since the RT20
RTX 20 series.
RTX 20 series with NVIDIA. So yun, they're bringing ray tracing to the masses, and then now we're seeing real-time ray tracing, whereas before sa mga Pixar films, yung isang ray tracing frame, it would take them up to minutes to hours to render. Pero the power of our hardware now allows us to do it in real time. So yun, gusto ko talaga.
Crazy yun talon ng tech. Lalo na yung 30 series ngayon ng NVIDIA, grabe.
And then sadly,
insane.
Yung tinatout ng mga consoles na 4K gaming, I'm not as excited about 4K gaming as much. Parang mas excited ako sa loading times, SSDs. Mas excited
sa
ako
frames.
sa ray tracing, sa frames. I'm more excited in getting the smoothness. But beware, like if any of our listeners are intending to buy a new console, next gen console in the Philippines, and you want to experience or maximize your experience, be sure that you have a compatible TV. Please.
Okay.
Part of the upgrade.
Tsaka kung gusto mo ng objective na kailangan bilhin mo pareho. Doon ka lang magkakaroon ng totoong idea kung ano ba talaga yung mas okay for you. Siyempre, kung yun na, specs-wise, halos pantay, feeling ko magkakatalo talaga sa controller, sa games, yung mga ganun. Kung ano naman, di ba? Kasi controller lagi mong hawak eh.
Yes.
Di ba?
Yes.
So, maganda kung may pera ka, bili mo pareho, di ba? Yun talaga.
I think that's what defines this generation. This is probably the generation where the answer to the question of what should I buy is actually both.
Both.
Instead of one. Because, for example, me, invested na ako sa Xbox na ecosystem. Dami ko na achievement points. Sayang na achievement points.
Continuity.
But
Sayang.
The games are so nice on PlayStation, man. I want to play
Yun,
PlayStation.
yun eh.
Tama.
But at the same time, some of the games on Xbox are nice too. You know, I want to play Halo. I want to play Ori.
Gears.
And Gears. Yeah, I just bought Gears
Gears.
of War 5. I can't wait to play that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think this generation is the generation where you should buy both if you have the money.
If you have the money.
If you have the money, which is not something I have.
Sure.
Marami yatang Pilipinong
Pero wait,
nandun sa ano.
Ikaw Mix. What would you buy given the choice?
Kung magko-console ako ngayong generation na to,
Oh.
Series S siguro.
Sinabi niya, kung magko-console,
May ano eh.
Hindi, magsi-Series S siguro.
yes.
Okay.
Tapos kung swertihin, magkapera tayo. PS5. Kasi nga, dahil sa games eh.
Dahil sa games.
Pero ano ba sa PS5? The discless version or the disc
Discless. Kasi ano na eh, mas ewan ko. Ayoko na nung maraming clutter eh. Siguro bibili ako ng physical na kahit sa PC, kumbaga kung may, kunyari lumabas yung Diablo 4, kung may special edition yun, mga ganun bibili ako nun. Pero yung bawat game, putya physical sa PC or yun nga, parang hindi ko na gagawin siguro. Yun, Series S muna, unahin ko.
Actually, nung nag-announce yung Xbox, yung Series S talaga yung pinaka-attractive para sa akin.
Kasi 1440p, plano ko na rin mag-upgrade ng soon in the future sa PC ko na, sa monitor ko ng 4040p. So sakto siya. Nandun na rin eh.
Pero just as a word of warning, because the one thing that I really like about the PlayStation 5 compared to the Xbox is the memory expansion.
Yup.
Kasi I don't think the Xbox did the right thing by going proprietary.
Sobrang mahal pa eh. 10K yata.
Yata.
Yung 1K, and ito listeners, beware, when you buy a 1 terabyte Xbox, you're not getting a 1 terabyte Xbox. Kailangan mo i-factor in yung OS installation.
OS, yep.
Okay, the OS installation is 100 plus. So
Parang sa PC lang din.
you're
Din.
getting maybe 800 plus of usable gigabytes to your Xbox. On the PlayStation 5, it's even worse because the PlayStation 5 went with a weird sizing of their SSD. Hindi siya 1 terabyte. It's 800 something.
Yep.
Ba yan? And then so when you deduct the OS from 800 something, you only get 600 something.
That's like a couple of games.
So
Parang
beware.
tatlo or apat na games.
When you're buying something for the storage, read the
Malala yung
yeah.
Series S. Parang 300 plus gigs na lang yata.
Yun, this is what I want to warn you guys about. The proprietary storage expansion for the Xbox cost $220.
So kung dito plus, sabihin natin, plus 5K kung ano man yung conversion ng $220.
Di natin 15K.
Mga ganun.
15K for an additional terabyte. Whereas, what I like about what the PS5 did is there's a panel there you could open up. Pwede ka lang maglagay ng any M.2 SSD, which you could buy at Silicon Valley. and then yung 1 terabyte ng Xbox is $220. Yung 1 terabyte M.2 is around $120. So there's a 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 peso difference in expansion. Pero here's the kicker. Let's say you buy the Xbox Series S.
Ito na.
$299 lang. So that's 15K. Let's say
But
15K. Pero 380 something lang yung storage niya.
Yeah, so mag-expand ka talaga
That's 6 games. That's like 6 AAA
COD
titles.
lang, ubus na yun eh.
Oh. yung COD ngayon, 300, 200 plus na. Plus
Tayo na
multiplayer
COD
mode.
lang, tapos yun. Pucha.
Pero let's say, okay, na-enjoy ka sa Xbox mo. Oh, enjoy pala tong Xbox. And then, napuno na. Nag-install ako ng 4 na games, puno na siya. So,
Palit ko
usaka expansion.
expansion card.
Pagbili mo na expansion, tangina. Yung total price pala ng dalawa.
Series X na.
Binili ko na lang sana ng Series X. May 4K gaming pa ako. So, it really depends on how you intend to use your Xbox.
Yep.
If you're using Xbox as a secondary gaming platform, then that's fine. That's great. Remember, the Xbox Series S is targeted at the Nintendo Switch users. Same price sila.
Okay.
Series S and Nintendo Switch, same price. So,
Tsaka cute niya kahit saan pwede mo dalhin eh.
oh,
Kahit sa backpack mo, salpak mo lang dun.
yeah. Pero ikaw, Marts, what would you buy?
PS5.
Yan.
The PS Warrior.
Simple answer.
The Ghost of Tsushima. Excited ako dun eh. Exclusive ba yun? Yung Tsushima, di ba?
Exclusive yun.
So yun guys, kung mamimili kayo ng consoles, magbasa-basa tayo. Total, may access naman ng karamihan sa atin sa internet eh. Gamitin natin yung internet. Para hindi sayang ang pera.
Walang correct answer. Kung ano talaga. Nasa sayo.
Nasa sayo.
Kung ano yung trip mo eh.
Especially this
kung ano kaya ng bulsa mo.
Sa akin, PS5 kasi continuity eh. Parang simula PlayStation 1, meron na kami sa bahay. 1, 2, 3, 4, lahat.
Alam mo na kung ano yung makukuha mo pag bumili ka nun.
People are tired of listening to consoles. But let's keep it terrestrial.
Terrestrial.
Let's keep it terrestrial.
Isuot nyo na yung mga tinfoil hats nyo.
I would like to hand the floor over to my fellow BandTito, Miguel. Los BandTitos!
Titis!
For the next topic. Next topic.
Yeah. Next topic.
So, ang ating next topic, kanina, i-recap ko lang na yun nga about the consoles, mas maging masikap tayo sa paghanap ng mga info about sa mga bagay na bibili natin sa mga electronics.
Yes. Kasi if you don't research properly, masasayang lang yung capabilities ng console mo.
Hindi mo ma-maximize.
Speaking of things nga nasasayang,
so yung topic ko about nuclear energy sa Pilipinas, kung ano bang matutulong niya or ano bang biglang talon sa science pero yun, parte ng show yun kung saan tayo mapupunta. Depende sa trip namin. So trip ko ngayon yun. Pag yun yung trip kong pag-usapan ngayon. Siguro simulan muna natin sa mga dating tinry gawin ng Pilipinas. Ayun, so yung pinakasikat doon, yung Bataan.
Yes.
Ang makulit doon, well, hindi ako masyado magdi-deep dive sa info about that kasi magiging political na yun eh. Personally, ayokong mapunta doon sa political side kasi ibang ano na yun eh. Mahirap ng ano yun.
Sensitive.
Sensitive topic na yun eh. Ang pag-uusapan ko doon is yung, well, sa akin lang na medyo mind blown ako kasi may napanood akong, hindi ko alam kung masasabi siyang conspiracy or masasabi siyang parang medyo sci-fi shit. Basta may isa akong napanood, kung familiar kayo kay Bob Lazar. Siya yung parang sinasabi nila na nag-work sa isang sa isang parang hidden tawag dito. Mga military bases ng Amerika. Tapos parang lumabas din siya kay Joe Rogan. Actually, doon siya mas sumikat siya doon. Lumabas siya sa podcast ni Joe Rogan.
Familiar yung name pero
Bob Lazar. Meron
this is a first for me.
Yeah, meron siyang docu sa Netflix. Sobrang straight face kasi siya mag-explain na tipong kahit sobrang out of this world na yung sinasabi niya, parang pucha mapapaisip ka na tayo naman, ang totoo yata to. Pero anyway, hindi yun yung ano ko doon. Ang pinaka sumabog yung ulo ko. Sinabi niya na nung 70s or baka nga earlier pa, yung biometrics yung mga biometric IDs, ganyan na ginagamit ng mga high-tech companies na ngayon normal na lang yung mga fingerprint, yung mata, ganyan, or yung kamay mo, papatong mo. Meron nun dun sa Bataan Power Plant. Yung mga una nun. So lumalabas na mas high-tech yung Bataan NPP, Nuclear Power Plant, kesa sa karamihan ng mga functioning power plants sa Amerika ngayon. Yun, doon ako pinaka na, what the fuck?
Pero I read something din na kasi yung perception ng tao is when you construct a power plant in the 80s, more or less defunct na yun ngayon kasi we're in the 2020s na, di ba? But apparently, for nuclear power, that's not true.
Nope.
Kasi some of the first nuclear power plants na built ng US are still functioning now, and they're 15 years older than Bataan.
Yep.
And
Older tech.
Oh.
Ano lang, kumbaga may pera lang talaga sila pang maintain. Well, nag-fail sila dun sa ano yan? Yung something island na nag-meltdown din.
Pennsylvania.
Basta something may ganun.
Oo.
I-search nyo na lang sa Google. Nag-meltdown din, parang yung nangyari sa Japan, yung mas recent, parang ganun din yung nangyari. Pero yun nga kaya hindi natuloy din yung sa Bataan kasi ang pinaka kinokontra ng mga tao doon is sabi nila nasa fault line daw tapos basta daming ibang environmental hazards na doon sa mga nababasa ko naman na ibang mga Pinoy scientists natin kasi sa totoo lang sa buong mundo nasa top yung mga nuclear scientists na mga Pinoy. Yun ang hindi alam ng karamihan ng mga Pilipino.
Pero mind blown ako, Migs. Kasi may pala tayo, may nuclear authority pala. May nuclear under sa Department of Science and Technology. May isang department doon na dedicated to nuclear research. Kalimutan ko na yung name.
Dito lang sa Commonwealth may dyan, may research reactor dyan for experiments.
Meron pala tayong ganyan.
Nandyan lang, nakatambak lang.
That is so amazing, man.
Pwede nyo puntahan yun. I-search nyo lang. Nakalimutan ko yung pangalan Pero ilagay nyo lang na experimental reactor Commonwealth, lalabas yun. Pwede kayo mag-tour dun. Parang yung Bataan, pwede nyo rin puntahan yun. Ang ganda sana ng Pilipinas kung natuloy yun. Sa totoo lang.
Buong mundo actually. Kasi kung sa impact, kung sa mga deaths lang din, ang onti ng ang onti ng casualties niya
Yep.
compare sa coal or fossil fuel.
Kasi sa coal, ang daming, kumbaga yun sa pagmamine pa lang nun, may mga namamatay dyan na hindi naman news.
Oo. Kasi yung kumbaga lang siya highlight siya sa news yung mga Chernobyl ganun kasi parang rare occasion.
Tsaka grabe kasi yung scale
Pero
pero ganung scale para umabot siya sa ganun kalawak na audience. Kailangan po siya yung mababago yung buhay ng isang buong bansa ganun.
Tama. Tsaka kung isipin mo nasa infant stage pa lang tayo sa pag-develop ng nuclear energy, diba?
As a whole.
Infant stage, pero sadly kasi may nakita ko na na news article na striking yung sinabi ng scientist doon. Sabi niya nuclear power has a PR problem daw. And then sabi niya
Yun mismo.
basically you can sum it down to the saying na you don't get a second chance at the first impression. Yung first impression kasi ng nuclear was the atomic bomb.
The atomic bomb.
Yun talaga.
Destruction imbis na pag-rebuild
So when you say nuclear, yung may isip mo yung mushroom cloud na.
yun na agad
Pero partially true yun kasi parang hindi ka pwedeng gumawa ng nuclear energy without tying it to nuclear weapons.
Yes. The destructive element is still there,
Nandun talaga.
but ang hindi lang like what people can't get over is the idea that this is a more controlled reaction. And it's actually quite safer.
Safer kung compared sa ibang
Yung perfect example, yung perfect comparison is flying. So the perception of the danger of flying is higher than the perception of the danger of driving.
Pero hindi.
Which is absolutely not true.
Sobrang liit lang.
For every 100 million miles of driving, there's like sa Europe nabasa ko na data in Europe, for every 100 million miles of driving, may 0.7 deaths. So there's almost one death for 100 million miles of driving.
So times 100 mo sa Pinas yan. Di joke lang. Baka may ma-offend na naman. Sabihin na naman.
Buti na lang matraffic sa Manila.
Mabagal lang yung takbo palagi.
But for the corresponding 100 miles of flying, 0.035 lang.
Okay.
Sobrang liit.
So flying is definitely safer per mile of distance traveled compared to driving. However, the perception is because you are in the air, you're at a magnificent height where you can see that the world is flat.
Wait lang, gusto ko lang sabihin kasi baka sabihin nyo kung ano-ano sinasabi ni Henry. Piloto si Henry, so alam niya yung sinasabi niya. Baka lang biglang may mag-comment dyan. Yung sinasabi nitong ganun-ganun. Point ganyan-ganyan. Anyway, Tuloy natin.
But yeah, yun, sakto yun, Migs. I do have to answer those questions occasionally. Especially when you hit turbulence in the air. So I have to explain that, there's never been a crash caused by turbulence. And then when you correlate that to driving, turbulence is basically just like hitting a pothole. It's the exact same thing. But because we feel disconnected from the Earth,
Tsaka yung Hollywood kasi kasalanan ng Hollywood.
it's definitely more dangerous. And nuclear has the same exact problem.
Yep.
Sa tingin ko lang, I think it's an overblown fear of an uncontrolled nuclear reaction turning a power plant into a big nuclear bomb.
Yep.
Which speaks to people's lack of research, lack of just looking into the technology in general. Ba? It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And then there was an interview, DZMM yata to, na may nag-explain. He was part of the DOST. I mean, what people fail to realize is bad yung picture. Chernobyl painted a really bad picture of nuclear. And then, I mean, we can all point to fingers. We can all point fingers and say, okay, Bataan nasa fault line.
Or whatever, marami
It
pang
was an
ibang-
administrative change, naging Cory Aquino galing sa Marcos or whatever. There was corruption, etc., etc. But
Tsaka yung price biglang tumalon eh.
so
Para to start it up yun naman yung pinakamahal dun eh. Yung pag-start up eh.
the money involved, etc., etc. But I think it's safe to say that the real reason why the Bataan power plant was closed was because of Chernobyl.
Yep.
Everybody was suddenly running about
Paranoid.
Chernobyl. And then the guy made a good point. He said, you know what, Chernobyl is very different technologically speaking from Bataan. The protections at Bataan are better than the protections of the Soviet era reactor.
Iba-iba
of
rin kasi talagang
Chernobyl.
types of nuclear power, di ba?
Doon ako na blown away kasi I looked at sinabi niya, you know what, Philippines and South Korea started their nuclear program at the same time.
Yep.
And Philippines has exactly 0 nuclear power plants.
Nakakalungkot eh. Pwede nyo mapanood yung Chernobyl na series. Fairly accurate siya on the science side. Pero yung political side, wag nyo na asahang maging accurate yun. Kasi syempre,
Those are one of the series gusto ko i-watch.
kailan, syempre, iiwasan nilang maging accurate dun. Kasi baka may mamatay na lang bigla sa kanila. Anyway. So yun nga, balik tayo sa Pilipinas. Yun, bale sa mga nabasa ko, as a layman, na interesado dito sa nuclear power kasi ngayon nga maliban sa malinis siya. Ang pinaka-posibleng pwede mangyari kung hindi talaga magawa ng paraan yung sa Bataan kasi unang-una pag nagkaroon tayo ng nuclear power, yung mga rural areas, ang hirap pagsalita.
Rare areas.
Yung mga rare areas. Mas maaabot na ng kuryente kasi pwede ng, kumbaga, for the meantime, yung mga main cities mo na gagamit ng, kunyari lang to sa pananaw lang ng isang normal na citizen. Pwedeng yung main cities mo na yung gagamit ng nuclear power, tas yung fossil fuel and other stuff na power, dun muna sa mga malalayong lugar, sila muna gagamit. At least magkaroon lang muna sila ng power. Tapos, ang pinakamagandang solusyon na recently na lumalabas, matagal na to pero ngayon lang napapansin ng hindi mga scientists is yung mga SMR. Yung SMR, shortcut siya para sa small modular reactors na babagay sa Pilipinas. Kasi since archipelago tayo, medyo mahirap maglipat-lipat ng gamit.
Large scale.
So kung kunyari lang umabot sa point na yung isang reactor, sabihin natin para sa isang barangay, may isang reactor lang na kasing laki ng, sabihin natin, kasing laki ng trailer, na 18-wheeler, ganun. Sobrang laking tulong nun, lalo na sa mga rural areas. No, parang sunod-sunod na yun. Pag gumanda yung power infrastructure, syempre susunod na yung ibang infrastructure dun. Gaganda na yung takbo ng, lalo na yung agri-tech, kasi konektado sa green tech eh. So parang marami siyang benefits na mabibigay talaga sa mga Pilipino na na nahihirapan talaga dahil sa walang kuryente. Walang tubig, ganun. Yung tubig konektado na rin kahit papaano sa kuryente dahil yung pagpapump minsan kailangan gamitan ng power. kung meron ka dyang reactor na bumobomba lang ng power, wala ka ng problema dun. So pati tubig,
Kasi
makakalat mo na.
yung hydropower, marami siyang sinasagasaan na mga villages or
Oo yun lalo na sa
towns.
atin kasi marami tayong natural resources na.
Parang okay, solid siya, maganda siya yung mga kung ano-ano mga dam. Pero yun nga at the cost of civilizations. Na sige, sasabihin nila na parang hindi well compensated yung mga yan. Paano mo mapoprove yun, di ba?
Oo naman.
Siguro
laro na dito parang.
yun nga. Siguro less casualties tong nuclear power.
Nuclear power.
So yung Bataan, may sister plants pala siya. So the same people that built Bataan, nag-build din sila ng 3 other same nuclear plants. Yung isa sa Korea, yung isa sa Slovenia, yung isa sa Brazil. And then, those are still functioning to this day, man.
Yeah, tayo lang talaga yung naglag.
Oo. And then, but
Natigil,
that's a testament. Ibig sabihin nun, Bataan could still function if they chose to. Kung gusto nila, hanggang ngayon, they could still try to make it fully function. Pero if you compare the power output sige, yung sister plant ng Bataan sa Korea is called Crisco or something like that.
Blackpink
Cory
yata.
pala.
Blackpink
Cory.
yata. Hindi, joke lang. Hindi ako hater ng K-pop joke lang yan.
BTS.
Yan mga sensitive
Backstage photoshoot.
BTS, nagagalit sa BTS. Ay, sorry.
Pero yun, yung comparable nuclear power plant na yun, si Cory yung name or whatever sa Korea.
Korea.
Yung output niya is according sa Wikipedia to, approximately 6,000 megawatts of energy. And then the largest coal power plant in the Philippines, yung output niya is nasa 1.5 lang or something like that. So imagine yung Bataan lang has the capability to produce 3 to 4 times more energy than our largest coal-fired power plant here at lower zero CO2 emissions.
Tama, yun talaga yan
Zero CO2 emissions and yung fuel, yung uranium na kailangan mo sa Bataan power plant. Pag load mo ng fuel, okay na yun for 18 months. Hindi mo na kailangan mag-reload.
Ang pinakatanong lang din kasing kasunod nun is yung waste.
Yes.
Kasi yung fission may waste
Oo.
Hindi siya katulad ng in the future kung magka-fusion na sobrang liit lang nung waste nun Kaya yun din isang tanong sa natin iso-store yun. Putya sa Amerika nga nagkakaproblema sila kung saan nila ilalagay yung waste Nangyari nga, kung hindi lang nangyari yung ano bang magandang term doon? Yung trade wars ng China at ng US. Si Bill Gates may nagawa na siyang paraan para magamit yung mga nuclear waste, i-recycle yon para magamit ulit sa mga specific na nuclear fission plants na gumagamit ng mga nagamit na fuel. Kaso nabitan nga dahil sa hindi makapunta biglang hindi pwede pumunta si Bill Gates sa China dahil sa mga kung ano-anong political. So yun, sayang naudlot. Ewan ko, sana after nitong pandemic, post-vaccine, sana balikan nila yon at sana si President Xi Jinping mapaisip na dahil wala tumatambak yung waste pag gumaya yung ibang bansa, gagaya lang din yun sa sistema ng Amerika at ng China na ganito nila tinatambak di tambak muna natin ng ganito. Sa Pilipinas mahirap yun dahil wala naman tayong mga lupain na katulad sa Amerika na walang matatamaan na gubat or walang matatamaan ng mga indigenous na tao. So baka mamaya mag-storage yan yung mga bahay ng mga ETA tapos sa ilalim po siya may mga drum ng mga, di ba, kawawa naman. Parang yun yung isang kinakatakot din ng mga experts dito sa Pilipinas.
Spent uranium.
Kasi yun nga gusto recycle ni Bill Gates yun kasi malaking problema sa Amerika mukha lang hindi dahil marami silang resources, marami silang pera para itago pero dumadating na sila sa limit ng pagtatambakan nila. Well, ano niya sa comments kung may napansin kayo news na nagagawa na nila ng paraan. Pero para sa akin, yun yung pinakamaganda na paraan na mawala yung waste is gamitin ulit. Parang pigain talaga siya to the point na wala na siyang harm na magagawa sa environment.
Pero may mga designs naman supposedly reactors that use a byproduct of the spent uranium. Pero
Depende talaga, no?
yung big problem lang ng nuclear is
Political. Joke lang.
yeah. And so aside from yung PR problem nila, yung mga established coal, gas, and
Money.
yeah, all those established electrical companies that compete with nuclear energy, syempre ingrained na sila in the political systems of these countries.
Yun eh.
And so they have the means to
Stop whatever you're planning.
just to leave them on the sidelines. Oh, I mean, pwede natin sabihin that's very conspiratorial.
Pilipinas na yung pinaka-example nun eh. Yung ganun.
Hindi kasi kung iisipin mo, alam na natin kung paano Yung nuclear medyo experimenting pa tayo Gets mo?
Oo, pero magagaling mga nuclear scientists natin. So ako, personally, malaki tiwala ako na kung suportahan ng gobyerno yan, kaya natin
yun na Sa experimental side, for sure, well-tested na yan. Pero sa business side, hindi
yan
pa Hindi pa Malaking factor lalo na, syempre, capitalism.
Oo, yan talaga.
Yun naman nagdadrive sa atin yun ang dugo ng society natin Diba?
Pero just as an example, France gets 80% of their power
Sa nuclear.
from nuclear.
Okay.
So
Sila ba yung highest?
I think
Sila yata, no?
Sila yata yung highest. So
Okay, hindi ba China? Kala ko
Hindi.
China.
pero China is getting up there.
Alam ko
Oo.
mataas ang China
Tinatry na nilang
China is getting, and then in fairness sa China, ambitious yung goal nila by 2060 yata. Yun.
Ano nila?
By, number 2 lang sila ngayon.
Taiwan number 1. Joke lang yan. Sa mga gamers, alam nila yan. Taiwan number 1 sa CSGO. Kaya sa titrigger yung mga Chinese. Sorry sa mga Chinese bros namin dyan. Baka may ma-offend. Joke lang yan.
Pero yung imagine yung 80% of your France is a big country. How many Philippines can you put in France? Pero if kaya nila gawin yung 80% of their energy from nuclear, then why can anybody else do it, di ba? It's a sign that nuclear is not an emerging power. It's not an experimental power. It's an established power, and it's really just political will.
Political will.
Kung paano mo i-integrate sa business side.
Paano mo i-convince yung mga tao sa power na
How do you
okay to?
convince your constituents na this is a benefit for all of us?
Dito sa Pinas, feeling ko kailangan mo i-convince yung mga politiko na may pera dito. Yan. Para kasi, ewan ko para sa akin
Kasi for sure naman alam nila na meron. Di lang siguro nila alam kung paano.
Or hindi kasi laki.
Lalo na yung transition. Kasi syempre, sanay tayo sa ganitong pamamaraan.
Or yun nga, or hindi kasi laki. Kumbaga yung kinikita namin dito, ganito yung ganyan, kalahati lang. So parang bakit?
Hindi natin alam what's going on behind the scenes.
Baga,
Although, I mean, in fairness sa current administration, may nag-attempt na i-revive. However, hindi natin alam what goes on behind the scenes.
Siyempre, sila na may alam yan, mga ganyan.
Kasi when you look at the established power players in the country, Meralco, the Lopez family, yung Veco, Aboitiz, mga ganyan. These are all very established companies.
Ancient na yung mga yan
And then they all own large power companies in the Philippines. So, yes, they're all saying the right things. They're all saying, we're for green energy.
Yup.
We're for hydropower, we're for solar, we're for wind power. But we don't know how much of talk they're willing to walk. Hindi natin alam. Like,
yun nga, yun mismo yun
Like, are they just doing this purely for PR? Or are they really slowly shifting things behind the scenes? I don't know, man.
Pero to be clear lang, yung green tech kasi, may catch din kasi yan Katulad ng solar panels, tsaka ng wind. Kasi yung production nung panels, tsaka nung turbines, gumagamit ng power na nanggagaling sa fossil fuels. So sa ngayon, sa state natin yan, sa mundo, hindi lang sa Pilipinas, kumbaga, hindi pa siya talaga 100% green technology kasi nga
ganun pa rin.
Para i-produce siya, magkakalat ka muna
Tsaka, compare sa nuclear, yung nagagawa ng water, kasi medyo dependent sa environment din, di ba? Parang kung hindi maaraw or kung hindi
Swertihan,
mahangin.
medyo swertihan sa pwesto eh.
Oo, yung nuclear kahit saan eh. Kahit saan mo ilagay yan. Makaka-produce ka ng...
Basta madedeliveran mo ng fuel.
Tama. So yun nga, kung alternative talaga, kung wind, solar, nuclear yung best.
Nuclear yung best.
Sabi nga nila,
Huwag tayo matakot.
nuclear is the best interim solution.
Yep.
Because no CO2 emissions.
Ayun talaga. Big factor.
No CO2 emissions. However, may mga downsides siya.
May waste pero
But we can do nuclear while we're developing all of these green technologies, and then when we're ready to transition fully to the green technologies, then we can slowly phase out nuclear.
Yep.
Instead of using coal all the time.
Unless
or fossil fuel. Diba?
Unless in the next decade, na palaging sinasabi ng mga scientists, in the next decade, magkaroon na ng fusion reactors. Yung mga ginagamit na reactors kasi ngayon, fission eh. So yung difference ng fission is pinasplit mo yung atoms, yung fusion, pinagbabangga mo sila. Which is mas maraming energy na produce sa mas maliit na mass.
The power of the sun.
Parang technically yun yung gagawin mo. Ay, ang challenge lang kasi sa ngayon, although sa Europe kasi may mga binubuo na fusion power plants na itatry nilang going feasible in the next decade. Palaging ganun in the next decade. Pero ito feeling ko, as a layman, feeling ko itong next decade na to totoo na eh. Na magkakaroon na ng, hindi pa siya commercialized, kumbaga, para lang siya sa mga scientists na, gumagana yung namin, theory namin or whatever. Pero at least, kung mangyari yun, may bright future na, kasi ang madadala ng fusion reactors, almost unlimited power yun eh.
Yeah.
So, para sa mga third world countries, yung sinasabi kong SMR, mga small modular reactors, kung fusion reactors yun, na kasing laki ng refrigerator, na kaya mag-power ng barangay, pucha, grabe yun. Yun yung leap sa technology na. Yun na yun, feeling ko maglo-launch sa atin sa ibang... Lahat na, sunod-sunod na eh. Pag nangyari yun eh.
Yun yung mga...
Sci-fi shit na yun.
Yeah.
After nun, puta.
That is the leap, not just the leap in imagination, pero the leap in civilization. Na parang naging... It's like going from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age.
Ganun siya. Ganun yung effect niya.
Grabe yun.
Daming matutulungan.
Pero just like everything else, kailangan niya i-hurdle yung human perception kasi remember when Oppenheimer was about to make the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb, yung fear niya,
the destroyer of worlds,
was when and that's where it comes from, the
I
destroyer
have
of
become
worlds.
death.
Akala niya yung explosion of the atomic bomb would create a chain reaction in the atmosphere of the Earth and would destroy the whole Earth. So yun yung main fear niya.
Masusunog yung sky literally.
Pero somehow they went through with it. Siguro out of necessity they needed to do it. And then the same perception problem plagues nuclear power. Kasi we think what might happen to the atomic bomb will happen to nuclear power. It also plagues the Large Hadron Collider. Kasi sabi nila it'll create a small black hole in the middle of the Earth. And it'll suck us all in. And then
yung mga creatures nga daw dun eh. Sabi ng mga conspiracy theorists natin dyan eh. May mga nasa summon daw ng mga beings dahil dun eh. So, whatever floats your boat, man.
Ano yan? Lalabas bigla si Spider-Man from the multiverse.
Ito pala yung Earth mo. Kahit taga-Earth din siya.
Pero yun din yung sinasabi nila sa fusion. Sabi nila, okay, when you start fusion, that will be the beginning of the growth of a mini sun that will eat our world. Kasi baka daw, it'll get bigger, and then it'll eat the Earth. So every sort of new leap in technology has
may mga ganun eh.
Mga ganyan, mga basic perceptual problems that needs to be
yun nga, parang
overcome.
basic na fear of the unknown eh. Yun talaga yung
Exactly.
pinaka-primal fear ng tao eh. Fear of the unknown. Di natin alam eh, parang, yun nga, kasi sobrang hirap mag-startup ng fusion reactor sa totoo lang. Yun yung isa sa pinakamalaking challenge. Para ma-jumpstart mo yun, ang dami mong kailangan resources eh. Tapos pag na-start mo yan, sunod na challenge is yung pag-maintain mo ng temperature, pag-contain mo kino-contain mo yung star eh. Nagko-contain ka ng maliit na star.
Grabe ka cool. That's such a cool concept.
Ganun siya kaulol eh. So parang, kung mangyari yung kakainin yung mundo, parang di na ako magugulat eh. Kasi puta, technically may sun ka dito sa lupa eh. Eh yung sun nga na napakalayo, ang init na eh. Puta, paano kung katabi mo lang, di ba? Parang puta, wala, sunog ka agad eh.
Ano nga yung name ng scale, the scale of civilizations where
Kardashev.
the Kardashev scale. That would go against that would kind of disprove the Kardashev scale in a way kasi ano yun type 3 civilization ba yun where you
Hindi.
harnessing or type 2 ba yun?
Type 1
Type
yung...
1.
Ang mangyayari, pag yun, yung kaninang sinabi natin na pag yung fusion reactors naging normal na lang, masasabi ko ng type 1 na tayo nun.
Yes.
Kasi naka-harness na natin yung parang lahat ng...
Sa planet.
Oo, kasi ma-harness na natin lahat sa planet.
Piniga na natin anong pwede sa Earth.
Yun na yung pagiging type 1 civilization, yung naka-harness mo na yung buong planeta mo.
And then type 2 is where you harness the whole solar system. Tama ba yan?
Oo.
Tapos 3 yung galaxy.
Pero question, if you have a whole mini sun at your disposal on Earth as a type 1 civilization, why would you need to be a type 2 civilization to build massive infrastructure para ma-capture nyo lang yung energy ng sun?
Mismo.
Pero may
Yung
mini sun
needs
ka na.
din eh. Yung needs din kasi.
Okay, so maybe na ganun.
Aabot sa point na yung sun na mismo yung fina-farm natin.
So,
or aabot sa point na na hindi na habitable yung Earth.
siguro nag-indicate na yun na our
Yun,
population
isa pa yun.
has expanded.
We will expand for sure. For sure. Hindi
Pero,
mapipigilan.
Alam mo,
yun.
hindi lahat ng scientists...
Huwag lang tayo mamatay.
Hindi lahat ng scientists sold dun sa Kardashev scale.
Naman, syempre.
Kumbaga, ano lang siya, parang...
School of thought lang siya. Parang
Isang school of
nandyan
thought
siya.
lang.
Oo.
Pero hindi lahat parang... para saan? May
Oo,
point
ganun yun. Yun, sinabi ni Henry din. Yun nga, eh.
na parang bakit pa? Diba?
Kung pwede naman, di ba? Kung meron naman na ba't ganun. Ang akin naman, siguro, dadating kasi sa point na tayo na para ayoko kasi sabihin na ano eh, parang ang negative kasi ng word na plague. Pero technically para tayong plague. Kasi tayo na kahit saan tayo pumunta.
Yeah.
Katulad ngayon sa Mars, putya wala pa tayo doon, nagkakalat na tayo doon. may mga robot na tayo doon. Sa Moon, putya, ang dami na nating kalat doon. So parang kakalat talaga tayo eh. So kahit anong mangyari, kumbaga, yun nga, sana wag natin wasakin yung sarili natin.
Yung whole, ngayon, yung nag-launch sila ng Perseverance probe to Mars, one of the biggest hurdles daw was keeping it sanitized. So we're not taking any bacteria from Earth to Mars and we're not taking any bacteria from Mars to Earth. Pero, why didn't they think of that when they landed the landers on the moon? Ano ganyan ba? So, tama yung sinabi ni Migs. Okay, we're trying to keep Mars sterile. Pero the moon is probably full of our
pero
bacteria
yung
by now.
e-waste natin, kumbaga wala tayong biological waste. Pero may mga e-waste na tayo doon which is harder to parang get rid of. Anyway, siguro in the future makakagawa sila ng bacteria na kakainin yung plastic or whatever. Feeling ko ngayon meron na eh. So marami namang magagaling na scientists.
Nagplant na ng flag ang China sa moon.
Unahan sila sa tubig doon. Well, yun muna mauuna. Feeling ko sa moon mauunang magkaroon
ng civilization.
ng fusion power.
Fusion power.
Doon muna siya magsisimula eh. Kasi nandun yung fuel eh. Nandun yung hydrogen 3 ba yun? Basta, nandun yung fuel na pinakamadaling gamitin. So kung mangyari, parang mas magandang sa moon muna. Para kung mangyari yung nangangain, at least kainin yung moon. Although wasak din yung Earth pag kinain yung moon. Pero at least nauna yung moon.
The moon
may ilang minutes tayo. Shit, kinain yung moon. So parang pwede natin gawin for ilang minuto siguro. Yung kailangan natin gawin bago tayo mamatay. Tsaka kung interesado kayo sa Kardashev scale, search yung Kardashev. Although hindi siya, yun nga, sabi nga ni Martin, hindi siya parang, ito na yung ganito pala. Parang hindi siya, hindi yun yung,
it's a cool concept.
ano lang siya, school of thought lang siya.
And it leads to mga leaps in imagination na maganda din.
Masarap lang siyang isipin, kumbaga. Kung kayo yung tipo ng tao na gano'n.
Mga Dyson Sphere, di ba?
Yun yung sa type 2, kumbaga, build ka na actually hindi na nga Dyson Sphere yung inaano ngayon, parang Dyson Swarm eh.
Swarm.
Sobrang daming satellites
tama,
na nakabalot. Mukha siyang cloud around the star, tapos binibeam back lang yung energy.
Grabe yun.
So, those things na akala mo, well, maybe 50
Yung
years
Halo,
ago,
magiging totoo na.
Akala mo sa science fiction book lang, pero
Nangyayari na. Actually, ngayon nangyayari.
they're thinking of real ways to do it.
Yung ginawa ng Apple ngayon, sa mabalik tayo sa electronics, yung ginawa ng Apple ngayon sa yung M1 chip nila. Yung phone, parang technically yung phone nilagay nila sa laptop. Tayo na, fucking crazy. Siguro sa sunod na episode na lang natin pag-usapan yung mga
pro-mobile talaga ako eh. Kaya I went from being the whole PC thing to just carrying an iPad around.
Okay, extension na rin natin yun eh. Diba?
Tsaka medyo mahirap din kasi pag-usapan din talaga actually yung future kasi nga kahit yung mga scientists sinasabi nila na medyo parang nga sa ibang scientists parang sayang lang sa oras pag-usapan yung future kasi bukas pwedeng may breakthrough na
Totoo.
what bago na naman yung cardiac scale baka maurong yan baka maiba or baka mapaaga.
Totoo. Kaya ang sarap din mag-rewatch ng mga 40 years ago, 50 years ago na sci-fi.
Tapos may kita mo, meron na din ngayon eh. Joke lang.
May kita mo na shit,
ma-offend na
ang hirap i-predict nung mangyayari in the next 100, 200 years.
Sobra kahit nga yung next year lang. Kung sobrang technical nung iniisip mo, hirap na eh.
Yung mga communicators ng Star Trek,
Sobra
yung mga tricorders, basically our phones.
Tama.
Yung meron na tayo ngayon na type 1 technology is the internet. Type 1 communication na siya. So, yun yung isang bagay na
Tama.
totoo na. Nahawak na natin.
Siguro,
nagagamit na natin for ilang decades.
Baka medyo shallow siya, pero for me, the thing that really blows me away is the touchchscreen. The fact that I can just... Oh man, it's so amazing.
Gano'n pa kasimple yan para magawa yun, yung unang thing na yun.
Walang ganun sa Star Trek eh.
Siguro doon sa mga tao behind that, yung mga engineers.
Sa TNG.
Sa TNG na.
Yung mga engineers siguro wala lang sa kanila. Yung tagal na yun. Pero para sa mga normal na tao katulad namin, na-amaze kami sa mga ganyang bagay. So pagpasensyahan nyo na kami. Comment yun.
Pero ano kaya, like what kind of chemical was that guy in like... What kind of chemical was he
ingesting? Mayroon pag-usapan yung mga chemicals din. Ibang topic yung chemicals.
Imagine naisip niya na yung pindot-pindot natin sa Nokia, that's an electrical
signal.
Ba't hindi
lang natin gawin?
Diba? But the body produces an electrical current. What if I just use the electrical current in my finger? Oh man, that was a breakthrough. That was a real breakthrough.
Tama.
Like, isipin mo na lang yung pinaka-umpisa eh. Yung tawag dito, yung computer lang eh. Para kung paano siya nagsimula eh. Diba? Parang, ang pangit lang ng simula niya dahil gera.
Space race.
Space race, gano'n. Pero, yung simula, tsaka yung ngayon, tayo na. Pag pinakita mo yung tech natin ngayon doon sa mga taong naumpisa, baka isipin nila,
diba?
Alien ka eh.
Yung may nung common diba?
May yung sa Dyson Swarm na sinabi mo. May gusto kong sabihin doon, pero ayaw ko i-spoil yung topic ni Martz.
Okay.
Kasi parang mas relevant doon siya sa topic ni Martz.
So yun. Conclude lang natin.
So kasi conclude na natin yung sa nuclear power. So yun nga, malaking tulong siya sa Pilipinas kasi nga aabot siya doon sa mga lugar na
remote.
Hanggang ngayon, 2020 na wala pa rin kuryente. Yung mga estudyante doon nag-aaral, kandila pa din. So yun yung, para sa akin yun yung gusto kong unang magawa ng paraan eh. Hindi yung pagiging komportable natin dito sa syudad eh. Yun muna eh. Yung pagiging komportable ng mga kapatid natin na yun nga na parang buong buhay nila hindi na sila nakaranas ng stable na kuryente or stable na tubig, ganyan. Yun.
And then yung Philippines is apparently the second most expensive country in terms of energy sa Asia. Just behind Japan.
Inalala.
And
tapos walang napapala yung ibang tao.
Oo. And then I mean, imagine kung may mapasok tayo na nuclear energy into our energy loop. Our energy costs would go down.
Bababa. Feeling ko yan yung isang rason din eh.
Minimum of 20% siguro, pero on the more optimistic scale by half. Like our energy costs would go down
Best
by
case
half.
Scenario.
And I don't know.
Sipin laking tulong nun sa mga middle class, sa mga lower middle class na hirap na hirap sa bills. Mahati yung kuryente nila. Na komportable pa rin sila.
Kasi mostly break even lang yung sweldo eh.
Yung iba ganun.
Nag-work sila para lang mag-pay ng bills.
Mismo. Sure. Yun ang unang, sila yung unang makakaramdam.
You know what? Before inopen ni Migs sa akin regarding this topic, every once in a while, nagfa-fly over ako sa Bataan Power Plant. And then, nakikita ko siya.
Dinuduraan niya. De joke. Pwede ka gumagana. De joke.
Communism, hindi pala.
Pero yun, madalas kayong mag-fly over dun.
Well, yung Bataan, in straight line distance, is not that far from Ninoy Aquino.
Alam na natin yung next topic mo. Aviation, baby. Abangan niya.
Aviation,
Aviation,
motherfucker.
baby. Marami akong tanong dun eh.
Pero
Anyway.
na-open yung eyes ko sa Batan and I was really amazed na Batan is actually not that far away from being operational if they wanted to.
Mhm.
And then doing a little bit of research on it, nakita ko na may mga companies na nag-propose to revive Batan at a cost of approximately $1 billion.
Mhm.
Which is actually a bargain. Kasi if you wanted to build a nuclear power plant from scratch, now,
Sobrang mahal nun.
nasa mga $10 to $15 billion yun. So times 10 the cost. And $1 billion to renovate Bataan, which produces 6 times the energy or 3 or 4 times the energy of a high-functioning coal-powered plant, $1 billion is basically the price of building a new coal power plant.
Parang ang sarap magka-guest na nuclear scientist.
Okay.
Or someone na may alam talaga dyan. Parang ang daming ang sarap itanong eh.
Kung sa Cebuano pa sinakto dapat that's a really good, it's a good idea. Just get
Sinakto parang swak na swak. Parang
get it
sure na sure.
operational again. Get it operational again. So many benefits. We bring the Philippines into a nuclear age.
Yep.
So yung mga scientists natin na yun yung specialty nila,
Na
they
magagaling.
can actually start studying it in earnest. Kasi that's what we have now, nuclear power. Brings us into the nuclear age. So many
Maraming
possibilities.
magagaling na scientist na Pinoy. Talagang wala lang talagang support. Sin maraming magagaling na Pinoy na scientist. Sana mabigyan sila ng ilaw. Anyway, next topic. Teka, break muna tayo ulit. Ito na.
Yan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna go from the terrestrial. So we went from consoles, next gen consoles, and then we started talking about nuclear technology in the Philippines. Well, nuclear power plants in the Philippines, and then going from nuclear power plants, we're gonna leave the Earth for a bit
It's time.
and introduce you to the red planet.
Yes, sir.
So, tinay mga tinfoil hats niya. Labo, conspiracy pala. Conspiracy pala. Hindi, joke lang.
Alam nyo ba, si Bill Gates, taga Mars.
Sabi ko na eh.
Terraforming.
Okay, game. Interesting topic.
Terraforming with an F or a PH? Terrapharmacy.
So, syempre, obvious na ang next target natin is Mars. Yun yung pinakamalapit na in terms of size. Tapos, hindi siya kasing violent ng Venus. Di ba?
Kalmado
Na
lang siya.
sabi nila, irreversible na raw yung effects ng CO2.
Ano,
Greenhouse
greenhouse.
effect. Greenhouse effect.
Greenhouse
And
effect.
also, women are from Venus.
Tapos, nalaman natin recently na hindi pala totoo yung volcan. So,
Why would...
Oh, yan naman na. Sabi ka. Napansin palagi.
Pero, ayun. So yun. Actually, kayo yung gusto kong tanongin doon. Dahil kayo yung pinaka-interested sa mga friends ko in terms of yun, terraforming. Kung parang mabigyan tayo ng opportunity ngayon as in 2020 na parang kunwari possible na kaya natin alter yung atmosphere or kung ano mga issues
Kunyari
na
nandun na yung technology.
nandun na yung technology.
Oo.
Parang i-consider nyo ba na talagang
Ikaw muna, Hen.
Of course, man.
maging Martian? Ayun, ganun.
Yung concept na yan.
Naturalized.
Oh, yeah. Siguro, baka
Di, pag ngayon na kayo umalis ni baby girl mo, pagdating nyo sa Mars, yung anak nyo, Martian na siya. Hindi siya pinanganak.
Hindi, ipapanganak siya sa space. Kasi,
Huwag sana sa space kasi baka maging abnormal yung skeleton
baka
niya.
hindi yung skeletal
System
hindi
niya, baka-
makasupport sa weight niya.
Oo. Eh.
pero ang fastest natin ngayon is 7 months ba? Or 8 months para makapunta ng Mars?
Kaya yata 3. Depende sa orbital, sa planetary
Pero
alignment.
nakakatakot pa
Kaya
din.
yata 3. Pero yun yung
Baka
average.
may
6 months
nangyayari
yata.
sa
6 to
tiyan
7 months yung
baby
average.
habang... yung radiation, lahat baka paglabas ng baby, apat yung kamay niya.
Tintin niya. Pero,
Kasi,
Kumatok sa kawin, naling bigla.
parang sobrang interesting na topic na yun kasi medyo unheard of siya lalo sa Pinas. Kasi stuck tayo yung center ng universe. Ano ba yun? Yung religious,
pero may satellite tayo.
Ayan na, ito na. Yung mga religious dyan na. Relax lang.
Agila One.
Hindi kami anti sa trip nyo. Ito lang yung paniniwala namin at ito lang yung hilig namin. Nililinaw ko lang.
Tapos, namulat ako sa ganyan sa StarCraft. Alam mo yun? First time na binili namin ng kapatid ko, si Marco, yung StarCraft.
Shoutout kay Marco.
Parang
Rare.
na ano kami na ako personally na nagkaroon ako ng interest sa what if may ibang mundo na may ibang creatures kung ano naman. Tapos syempre, nandun na tayo sa age na shit, posible pala na baka kaya natin in our lifetime na terraform ng kahit hindi
Na
Mars,
tayo mismo yung pupunta doon imbis sila yung pumunta sa atin.
Oo, tama. Na kahit hindi Mars kahit yung moon yun yung
moon
isa
pa
sa
lang.
mga pinaplano pero yun na masyado maliit, walang atmosphere, blah blah blah.
For science siguro. Kumbaga yun, pang eksperimento. Pero yung titira,
Yung
Mars talaga eh.
Mars talaga.
Titi.
Yun yung nakuha doon.
Yun yung take away mo rin.
Anyway, di ba plano nga nila gawin na ang moon is gagawin nilang platform papuntang Mars kasi mas madali mag-launch doon kasi
Artemis Project.
less fuel yung kailangan dahil yung gravity hindi kasing lakas ng Earth, etc. Ganun. Tsaka doon pwedeng i-harvest doon yung ibang resources na kailangan dalhin sa Mars imbis na gamitin pa natin yung resources dito, which is sinasabi ni Neil deGrasse Tyson na kinokontra niya na bakit pa natin kailangan maging multiplanetary species kung may technology naman na pala tayo para ayusin yung Earth. Ba't di na lang natin ayusin yung Earth? Ang akin naman doon bilang isang layperson kasi hindi naman natin mapipigilan talaga yung pagdami ng tao eh. Yung parang nga tayong plague in a sense na putya talagang pag pinabayaan mo yan, bang! Meron na nga tayong in place na mga ang tawag dito, mga birth control, whatever. Pero, putya, grabe pa din.
Exponential pa rin.
I mean, may point si Neil deGrasse. Love niya yung Earth, di ba? I mean, it's our home. We want to take care of it. But it's in our human nature
To explore.
to go out. To go out in search of greener pastures.
Yep.
So why not go out in search of redder pastures, di ba? I mean, why limit ourselves to Earth? Kasi alam naman natin, flat siya. So baka
So, di ba nga yung kasabihan niya na don't
will
put
fall over the edge.
all your eggs in one basket. Parang,
Yes.
di ba? Parang, pag may nangyari, wasak na lahat.
Yung sinabi ni Neil deGrasse Tyson na, because, okay, terraforming is an amazing, it's a dream. Well, it's a dream still, but it's an amazing goal to aim for. But it's a goal that we can't expect to achieve in the next 50 years or so.
For sure.
It'll take
Yung
a while.
time yung time talaga yung pinaka-kinokontra nila eh.
But our technology is leaning towards it. Eventually, we will get there. Pero yung point ni Neil deGrasse is, if we can terraform,
Yep.
then that means
Why
we
not?
already have the ability to save our own planet.
Si Neil deGrasse Tyson pala para doon sa mga baka hindi nakakaalam, celebrity siya, scientist siya, physicist.
Brother ni Mike Tyson.
Hindi na siya naging fighter, hindi siya fighter, thinker siya. Mike the Grass. Rare.
Tikiting.
Ayun. Okay. So, parang given the opportunity kay ni Chawi.
Absolutely, man.
Okay.
Pero it goes, it like when you say, be given the opportunity, would you want to be Martians? It brings up the thought of The Expanse, yung sci-fi show, yung The Expanse.
Okay yun, The Expanse. Panoorin yun.
Ang nangyari sa Expanse is, so yes, we're all humans. May humans that have populated the asteroid belt.
Fairly accurate yung science dun sa ano na yun.
It's a very accurate depiction of what might happen in the future. So there's human beings that have populated the asteroid belt.
Yep.
And then there are human beings that have populated Mars. And then you would think that all of them being humans,
Pare-parehas lang.
yeah, we would all share the same ideologies. We would still be connected to each other.
But
in the way we think, in the way we connect. Pero hindi pala.
May borders pa din.
Yeah, the humans that lived on Mars actually started their own ideology, and they became a totally separate human race. Human sila, but they did not identify with being humans
An
on Earth.
earthling.
Same as the ones that lived in asteroid belt, they did not, and I think this is probably very likely to happen kasi
Pwede nating sabihin siguro, sana wag ma-offend yung mga tao. Pwede nating sabihin na dun sa show na yun, yung US yung Earth, yung China yung Mars.
Okay.
Tapos yung the rest of the world, yung mga belters yung tawag doon sa show eh, mga nakatira sa outer rim. Sila yung nagfa-farm tuloy yung gamer eh. Sila yung nagmamine ng mga asteroids. So, nagfa-farm sila ng ng mga resources para gamitin ng dalawang mundo na yun na nagpapataasan ng ihi.
Sila yung parang blue collar.
Parang ganun.
Yeah.
Sila yung ganun.
kung mga miners. Kumbaga mga
Sila yung
miners.
palagi nagwawelga na, wala na kami makain. Palagi nyo kami inaabuso.
Gets ko naman na talaga magkakaroon ng parang some sort of elitism.
Divisions.
Parang
Divisions.
kami yung elite or kung ano man, di ba?
Pero yung tanong mo, Marts, yung iniisip ko dun, ano yun? Established na yung Mars o nagsisimula pa lang?
Magsisimula pa lang. Pero kumbaga,
Puta,
assured
mahirap
na.
yun.
Kumbaga parang
I don't know. I wouldn't want to be part of the first
Yung
wave.
pioneers,
okay,
yung
okay.
pioneers,
Guinea pig.
mahirap.
The first wave would be the worst, man. Kasi I read something on this para siyang a documentary about how people are preparing to live on other worlds, not just Mars but the moon. And then the one thing they all agree on is the hardest part about living and terraforming or just going there is the psychological aspect.
naman. Syempre.
And in fact, they say that the probably the most likely thing na mangyari is mutiny.
Kaya yung mga astronauts, sobrang tibay ng mga utak ng mga yan. Hindi lang katawan nila yung matibay. Yung utak nila kailangan fortress yan.
Hindi ka pwedeng biglang mag-snap.
Pero
yun.
massive props kasi when NASA announced the Artemis program, which is their long-term goal to colonize the moon, and which will become a jumping off point for colonizing Mars.
Generation natin
Ang
yan.
daming nag-volunteer. Thousands of people volunteered, which for me is a good
Sign.
It's a good sign for the human race. It means we haven't lost
Yung
our
kagustuhan
drive.
natin.
We haven't lost our drive to discover. Like this year has been a very anti-science year. It has been a very tragically anti-science year. So many people on different sides of the fence.
Anti-science. Joke lang. Continue. Baka nandiyan na naman.
Hoax ba? Hoax?
Kami anong anti-science? Wala naman kami sinasabi.
Pero yun, sad siya because yung mga anti-science sentiments have been echoed, re-echoed,
Over the
supported
decades.
by people who shouldn't be supporting this kind of thing, you know? I mean, and so for me, that the fact that people have volunteered for Artemis, they want to be astronauts on the moon, they want to be astronauts on Mars is a good sign. It means people want to leave Earth.
Grabe din kasi kung pioneer ka talaga eh. Grabe na agad. Hero ka na agad eh.
Tama. So ikaw, Migs? Parang...
Ako siguro, game ako kung yun nga, kung established na may, kunyari, may city na doon. Hindi naman city. Sabihin natin may parang village na doon, na may bahay ka na doon, pagdating mo doon.
Na sabihin natin 20 years na tapos wala naman masyadong...
Kumbaga, namatay na yung mga kailangan mamatay. Alam na natin kung paano ma-prevent yung mga basic na kamatayan doon. Yun, siguro gigame ako. Pero kung pagiging pioneer sa state ko ngayon, mahirap eh. Kasi ngayon nga, sinabi mo nga mentally ibang klaseng, kahit nga yung mga sa tingin mong mentally fit na tao, baka hindi pa pumasa eh.
For sure.
So parang, yun, dun siguro, baka hindi siguro kung as a pioneer. Pero as a citizen, gigame ako kung may established na.
Okay. Kasi naalala ko lang yung sa, anong show yun? Interstellar. Na di ba sobrang layo nung biyahe nila. Tapos kailangan nila ng parang simulation ng weathers.
Oo, nahanap ng tenga nila yung tunog ng ng nature.
Para lang Parang nag-ano sa akin yun nagtumatak sa akin Kasi parang, okay.
Napa-oo nga ka.
Oo, kasi normal sa atin na magkaroon ng ulan or sa ibang mga may snow, normal sa kanila may snow, ganyan. Tapos hindi natin ma-imagine yun kung walang ganun Tapos for sure sa Mars, iba yan. For sure. Halos same lang din yung hours a day. Pero for sure yung weather. Talagang
yung point nga ni Bill Nye na the science guy na pagdating mo sa Mars, hindi ka makakahinga dun Yun yung parang pino-point out niya palagi na punto niya na kaya ayaw niyang sinasabi ng tao na in the next 20 years na sa Mars na tayo, whatever. Kasi yun yung unang challenge na hindi madaling lagpasan yung paghinga pa lang dun So parang yun pa lang may psychological effect na putya pag nabutas tong bintana o hindi katulad sa Earth, okay lang, ipis lang yung papasok or whatever. Dun putya death So parang yun pa lang.
Unless ma-alter natin ang atmosphere. Which is yung kumbaga yun yung situation na
kung altered na, okay, walang problema.
Tipong na natin na naayos na natin in accordance with our needs.
Sabi nila, the best way, the best and most likely way that Mars is going to get colonized is for people to live underground. Because, firstly, living above ground, lahat ng mga, all the exposures to the elements are there. The thinness of the atmosphere, the lack of breathing oxygen, the exposure to the dust, the windstorms, lahat ng mga...
Yung water, di na masyado kasi magaling na tayo sa ganun. Ngayon pa lang
And then, when you're underground, you're not only protected from the solar rays and everything, you're also, possibly, nasa loob ka ng mga lava tubes. Kasi yun yung inisip nila, you could be in the lava tubes where there is a larger chance of having frozen ice.
Kasi yung tectonic plates ng Mars parang dead na
Dead na.
So hindi na siya dangerous na magkaroon ng underground civilization. Anyway.
And then may mga areas in the northern hemisphere na tinatarget nila as the most likely places to live underground because they're closer to all these craters na may mga frozen ice na. So they could harvest the ice. That's a source of water.
Sa moon din, ganun din yung plano nila. Sa craters din. Kasi yun naman, para hindi tamaan ng mga meteorites. Kasi walang atmosphere sa moon
Wala.
So hindi magde-deteriorate yung mga kung ano-anong bumabagsak doon. At least kung nasa loob ka ng malalim na crater, less yung chance na tumama sa'yo diretso.
Exactly. I think that's an excellent idea. Underground. Pero it brings up
a whole lot of problems.
We go back to the psychological problems again.
Na nasa ilalim ganun.
Being underground already adds the difficulty of being away from your home planet, living with a bunch of strangers, not being able to feel and hear the environment of Earth, and then you add claustrophobia onto that.
Ito na lang, tanungin niyo yung mga miners na halos buong araw, linggo-linggo nasa ilalim ng lupa. Sila pa lang, grabe na yung effect sa kanila kung nakatira ka pa doon, di ba? Parang, tapos nasa ibang planeta, parang, your mind is blasted. Mind blasting.
Kasi sa vision ko sa future, ano lang to, parang personal lang to, na inevitable yun
Yes.
Kung mag-survive man tayo, hindi tayo mag-self-destruct sa mga pinagagawa natin. Feeling ko, mag-venture out din talaga. Yun yung ano natin yun yung parang destiny natin for me.
As much as we love Earth, we are Earthers, man. Pero, we human beings, if we want to continue to grow, we will have to transcend Earth.
Parang OFW lang yun. Mahal nila Pilipinas, pero sa tingin nila sa ibang bansa yung future ng pamilya nila. So parang ganun lang. Mas larger scale lang.
Pero yung next step niyan is planetism. So planetism is a very far-fetched concept. Nobody would ever understand planetism now because we have only ever had one planet. Pero when we have the moon and we have Mars, may mga ideological
yun yung mapapanood nyo sa The Expanse.
Hey, I'm from Mars. Our music here is better.
Tama. May ganun
our literature is better. Mga ganyan. So,
kasi mauuna naman sa Mars yung mga tao sa sa STEM Science, technology,
pero wouldn't that be
engineer, blah 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 kung ano pa yan.
That would be so awesome if we could transcend our home planet.
Sunod nun mga artists na kasi maghahanap na yung mga tao dun ng something to entertain them.
Tama.
So, hindi talaga pwedeng sabihin na katulad ngayong pandemic, magsusurvive ka ba ng walang music?
Diba?
Magsusurvive ka ba ng walang movies?
Oo.
Yung art biglang naging, oh my God.
Tama.
Diba? Ano
Oo.
sinasabi nyo na? Naglabas ng galit eh.
Tapos kung
Kailan yung mga porn stars?
Ayan. Then, kasama rin sa pioneers.
art yun. Art din yun. Art
Kailangan
din.
eh.
Which boat are the porn stars on?
Oh, joke lang yun. Baka mamaya.
Yung next na dun is for sure Titan or di ba Europa yung
Yeah.
mga ibang
Kasi magiging madali na lang sa atin yung mas harsh na environment.
Oo.
Kasi alam na natin eh. Kung ano yung
Tama.
challenges.
We have to go for Mars because the moon, and people forget this. The moon is still somehow part of our still part of the Earth's magnetic protection from the solar system. So actually going to the moon wasn't that big of a deal in terms of protection from solar rays because it was still shielded with the help of Earth. Going to Mars
Training wheels lang yun.
is a totally different story. You're going.
Yun na yung real deal.
Oh, yun. Training wheels are off when you go to Mars. You're away from the magnetic protections. You go into the Van Allen belts, I guess. You go past the Van Allen belts.
Lahat na yun eh. Lagpas na eh.
Kaya yun yung sinasabi nila na the moon landing wasn't real because they would have been killed by the radiation instantly. Pero, I mean, that shows a lack of understanding of the protections of the solar system.
Tsaka yung PR din. Mga bad PR yun na naman. Parang palagi naman may ganun eh.
Pero kung ma-prove nila that human beings can safely go through that whole voyage and survive, land on Mars without any... Siguro may side effects talaga. Pero if
Yung time lang kasi talaga.
Yeah.
Pero alam ko may itong recent news lang. Parang nakagawa sila ng mas magandang fuel yata.
Konektado yun for sure.
Kasi yung time talaga eh. Yun yung pinakakailangang
for sure
mabawasan eh.
the best pa rin na nuclear energy.
Kahit nga sa mga eroplano, kunyari lang mangyari in the future na yung mga eroplano may mini fusion reactor yan. Sobrang linis na nung skies natin. Hindi ko naman sinasabi na lahat sa aeroplano lang nanggagaling. Pero ang laking tulong nun. Tapos hindi ka na magre-refuel. Pagbaba mo, sakay ka ng tao, lipad ka ulit.
That's what they're saying. Nuclear or atomic or whatever, that kind of power would be the best way to power a fledgling colony on Mars. Because it would provide a capability to produce possibly even an artificial gravity on Mars.
Tsaka less less maintenance. Less, yung hindi kailangan puntahan palagi na, kailangan i-reload, i-refresh yung kung ano man. Kasi matagal siya eh.
Yung Martian movie nga, yung dun si Mark Wahlberg. That was very very close actually.
Okay din yun.
May mini reactor silang dala eh. Which they buried.
Kahit
diba?
yung Interstellar, kasi si Kip Thorne yung scientist
Yun,
na inano
si
nila
Kip
dun eh.
Thorne.
Ang tawag sa ganun.
Yung parang advisor.
Consultant
parang
physicist.
Si Kip Thorne. Ano siya, close siya kay Stephen Hawking. Kaya ganun siyang level ng scientist.
Theoretical physicist siya, di ba?
So yun, i-research nila din siya si Kip Thorne. Malupit yun. Siya yung rason kung bakit nila nagawa yung simulation ng black hole. Kung bakit ganun yung itsura
Yung
nun.
image niya.
Siya yung nagbigay ng math.
Tama.
Ganun siya kabaliw.
Okay. So nakwento natin yung psychological hurdles, the technological hurdles.
Well, a little bit
lang.
Marami pa yun eh.
I mean, yung living underground, etc., harvesting water, etc.
Quality of life.
But we also have the communication hurdle with Earth.
Yan yun.
Matagal yung...
And then I watched something really interesting, man. We know what the speed of light is, right? It's that, I forget the exact value, but it was
300,000 kilometers per second.
per second. However,
Know it all.
and at that speed, it would take roughly 20 minutes, a 20-minute delay to communicate with Mars. Roughly.
Walang zoom dun.
Oh, yeah. However, this is
sa current tech.
yeah, this is a really awesome video by Veritasium.
Pinafollow ko yun.
And
Okay yun.
he pointed this out. He said, because the speed of light is so hard to actually test, we know what the speed of light is, but we don't know if the speed of light is the same in all directions. So what if it's 20 minutes to Mars, but it's instantaneous back to Earth?
Di naman natin mapuprove yun na hindi ganun eh.
Oh,
Wala na tayong way para malaman yun.
It would be so hard to figure out.
Ang hirap nga nun. Ang gulo nun.
So akala natin, so people on Mars are thinking, okay, so it took 20 minutes for him to say hello,
So, ganun din sa
So,
akin.
ganun din sa akin.
Yeah.
And that would bring up so many communications problems kasi pag sabi niya, yes, I'm doing okay, instantaneous pala yung dumarating sa Earth. And I thought that was really mind-blowing.
ang simple lang nung idea pero grabe yung effect niya
Oo.
pag tiningnan mo na yung ibang aspect.
And there's no way pala to prove it at the moment.
At the moment. Kaya yun nga, nakakatakot.
Possibly, when they do go to Mars, they'll be able to prove it. They might be able to figure out,
Ang daming, actually maraming mapuprove na mga hindi pa natin. Kaya talaga magandang pumunta doon. Yung life din. Kumbaga, kung may bacterial life doon, grabe na yun.
Ayun, yung Perseverance rover, di ba they're gonna try to bring samples back? That would be so mind-bending if they find bacteria in the soil.
Shoot down yun ng mga na joke lang. Off the record baka mamaya. may magising bigla dyan na hindi dapat eh.
Sobra astig yun eh. Kasi pag nahanap nila yun talagang...
And then the other cool thing about Perseverance was they're gonna try to make oxygen from the carbon dioxide on Mars. So ito na yung precursors to not just terraforming but to colonizing, because may dala sila na small container that has a device that turns carbon dioxide into oxygen on a very small scale lang, just to test if it works. And then if that works, they'll have to build something even larger for colonists.
Mox.
But that would, Moxie. That would be so awesome if they could create oxygen from carbon dioxide.
Balikan ko lang yung sinabi ko pala kanina sa yung tectonic movement ng Mars. Meron, pero maliit. Kasi may mga Mars quakes pa din eh. Pero sobrang liit niya na hindi siya nakakatakot. Hindi katulad sa Earth
meron
na...
palang tectonic activity sa Mars.
May konti. Parang ano na lang yun eh. Parang siguro sa movement na lang kasi kahit papaano umiikot pa rin siya. Parang... Pero hindi na siya katulad ng Earth na active talaga na meron lang. Kahit ngayong moment na to.
Pag ganyan ba, it means na medyo patay na yung core? The core is dead?
Yun ang theory ng mga scientists. Pero hindi pa natin kayang tingnan yung core ng... Kahit nga Earth, hindi natin alam kung ano talaga yung... Kumbaga mathematical ano na lang yun eh. Parang doon na lang nila binibase. So na okay, since meron tayong magnetic tawag dito, may magnetosphere tayo, may nagsisave sa atin against the rays ng sun. Siguro may dynamo sa loob ng Earth na nagpo-produce nung shield na yun. Parang ganun. Pero hindi pa natin yun nakikita visually talaga na. Pero nakabot din yun sa ganun point. Temperature at pressure lang naman yun. Ganun lang naman ang kailangan ni overcome.
Madali lang yun.
Madali lang naman. Pero believe naman ako sa mga scientists natin. Magagawa nila ng paraan yan. The next, siguro, 100 years.
Ako, naniniwala ako na pagdating sa mga ganyang mga technological advancements, medyo exponential yung development.
Exponential talaga.
For sure, kasi, alam mo yun, parang mahirap ng, unless magkaroon talaga ng parang, alam mo yun, societal breakdown, or kung ano man.
Maulit yung Dark Ages.
Talagang, natural sa ating mga tao na curious tayo eh. Na,
yung AI, pag naging God na yung AI, yan na...
Well, you can see, in the last 100 years,
next topic yan.
Technology has advanced more than in the last 1,000 years.
Tama.
So imagine what will happen to technology starting from now.
Electronics lang eh. Kahit electronics pa lang eh. Ngayon nga, at the moment na pinag-uusapan natin to, hindi natin alam kung ano yung kaya na talaga ng technology natin na gamit na ng militar ng ibang bansa eh. Kasi sila naman yung nauuna usually eh.
Alam ni Bob Lazar yan.
Yan na.
Yes. Pero ako, yung regret ko lang is, I wish I could have been born 100 years later. Imagine what we're doing now. 100 years later.
Ako siguro medyo iffy eh kasi pag ganun baka normal na lang siya eh. Parang ano ba to, hassle na pumila sa papunta ng Mars, parang nakakainis na, hindi na siya. Ngayon kasi ang saya pa dahil ini-imagine.
Hindi na pala enjoyable yung Star Trek no 100 years later.
Parang ang hassle na niya kasi ang dami mo nang pwede puntahan, ang dami nang pwede mangyari sa'yo.
Tsaka tayo yung transition eh. Tayo yung naka-experience ng medyo, alam mo yun, not so developed to space age. Alam mo yun? Sa lifetime natin, medyo na-experience natin yan eh. Na, alam mo yun.
Tsaka paano pag na-explore na natin yung galaxy tapos wala talagang ibang sentient being dito. Okay siya at kasi peaceful dahil tayo lang yung magugulo. Wala lang iba. Pero nakakatakot siya kasi mag-isa lang tayo. So pag namatay tayo, wala na.
Pero very likely, the chances are na
sobrang dami or
may
wala.
life talaga somewhere.
Pero
The
hindi intelligent.
Yeah, but it's not like anywhere near us.
Pucha ako, kahit bacterial life nga lang yan, kahit virus lang.
Meron
Yung
yan?
virus, hindi talaga sila buhay. Pero kahit ganun lang, grabe na yun eh. Nakakaulol na yun.
Basta
May mako-compare
self-sustain.
na tayo ng ibang tree of life eh.
I
Tama,
think meron, kahit sa solar system lang natin, like when they take samples from Io or from Europa or something, I'm sure
Mako-compare
meron
na natin
yan.
eh.
Oh.
For
Nakikita
sure.
natin yung DNA ba kung may
Extremophiles.
DNA man sila. Baka kasi hindi DNA yung ano nila eh.
Yun
yung
ang,
ginagamit
yun
nila.
ang may hinahanap ng mga biologists.
Diba? Ano yung nag-start para sa kanila para maging buhay from non-life to life? Kasi kahit nga dito, hindi pa rin alam ng mga biologist kung yung transition talaga mismo from a non-living thing to a living thing, wala pang ano yun eh. Exact na sagot eh.
Yeah.
Tama. Pero yun nga eh, parang di ba iba, parang Silicon Life daw. Pero may mga narinig akong parang mga biologists na sinasabi.
Feeling ko yun nga eh. Para masagot yun, kung paano tayo nabuhay, kailangan natin makita ng ibang buhay na iba sa atin eh.
Pero yun nga eh, parang sabi nila, bakit mo kailangan ng silicon? May carbon naman. Parang mas natural sa...
Mas abundant.
Pero di natin mapoprove yun.
Well, mas abundant sa Earth.
Hindi, yun yung perspective natin.
Yun nga eh. Question mark pa rin talaga siya.
Because all we're seeing, we're looking at things through the lens of Earth lang.
Earth, yun.
Hindi
eh.
natin alam
Kaya kailangan natin mapagko-compare na bagay eh. Na another tree of life eh.
That'd be so
May
awesome.
bagong show pala sa Netflix.
Alien Worlds. Yes,
Grabe.
sir. Enjoy ko doon. Nakita ko, well, first episode pa lang ako.
Nerdgasm ako doon, pucha.
That's so awesome.
Uy, bayaran nyo kami Netflix. Ano namin yan. Baka naman yan. Baka naman.
Sabi ni Chowie, ayaw ko nun, it's not real. It's not real. It's just computer graphics.
Isipin mo kung 2 times yung gravity ng planetang lilipatan mo.
Lakas mo nun pagdating.
Pucha, pagbaba mo na tapilok ka, wasak yung bindi mo. Sobrang bigat mo.
Shoutout kay Chowie. Kasama namin siya ngayon.
Hello.
Sinorgan, wala nandun sa control room. May ginagawang
Lurks, pakita ka ng isang website nga.
I-promote nga pala namin ngayon tong podcast na to. Nire-record namin sa Glasstone Studios. So kung trip nyo mag-record ng banda nyo or ganito rin, podcast, punta lang kayo dito. Punta lang sa Facebook nila.
Oh. So Mars, what else do you have to add?
Kung ako tatanungin, siguro papasa ko dahil lang sa family and friends. Yan. Parang hindi pa ako handa.
Game ka lang kung masasama mo sila lahat.
Siguro, depende. Most likely, hindi sila gigame doon. Kasi, syempre.
Ito na yung nakasanayan.
Kahit na sabihin natin established na yung, sabihin natin, kunwari, ngayon, 100 years ng may tao sa Mars. Yun. Feeling ko, kung unless kailangan, hindi sila gigame.
Parang paglipat sa bansa. Parang pag bigla mong inaya yung parents mo, lipat tayo sa... Hindi naman ganun kadaling desisyon yan.
Tama. Ganun. Masaya pa rin ako sa Earth.
So, off-planet pa kaya, di ba?
Tsaka,
pucha, mas alien pa yung gagawin mo.
Yung siguro, para maging sane pa rin ako, kailangan may banda ako eh. Tapos, for sure, sa Mars. Hindi kasing saya tumugtog doon.
Baka nga iba eh.
Baka iba.
Diba? Baka hindi mo trip yung kultura dun. So, kawawa ka. Isang buong mundo hindi mo trip yung kultura. Wala ka matatakbuhan.
Pero laking pasalamat natin sa sa privatization of rocket technology. Yung
SpaceX.
SpaceX.
Saka Blue Origin.
Blue Origins, Virgin Galactic or whatever. Or
Tuloy pa rin ba yung Virgin something?
they're still testing. Pero the whole privatization...
Nahuli lang sila onte.
Nahuli lang. They've had a few accidents kasi. But that whole boost to privatization has made that dream of colonization more realistic.
Yep.
Tama.
Because NASA left it behind. Not because they wanted to, but because the government...
Politics. Here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again.
Lagi silang na-defund eh.
Exactly.
As usual.
They just
Anti-science.
there was a lot of money being given to others and NASA was left by the wayside.
Hirap iba to ng anti-science.
And then now, this is the right way to go, man. Privatizing, why not have companies do it, di ba? And then, so now you have players like Elon Musk, you have Jeff Bezos, you have other visionaries. And then, speaking of Elon Musk, yung sinabi natin kanina, Dyson Swarm.
Yan.
This is one of the things that Elon Musk plans to do is a reverse Dyson Swarm. He doesn't call it that, but it seems like a reverse Dyson Swarm because one of the best ways to terraform Mars is to create a greenhouse effect in Mars. So you have to heat up Mars again because Mars is so cold because there's hardly any atmosphere. If you heat up Mars enough, if you melt
The ice.
whatever ice is there, it would possibly create a greenhouse. Pero sabi nga ni Neil deGrasse, possibilities are even if you heated up all the ice, it wouldn't be enough to create a greenhouse. So what Elon Musk is proposing is orbiting a bunch of satellites around Mars, parang reverse Dyson swarm. And instead of absorbing energy from Mars, they're
Bubugahan ng energy.
diverting energy from the sun to heat
Parang
up.
ima-magnify nila.
Yeah, they're magnifying the heat of the sun, making it hotter and reigniting the atmosphere. I thought that was a really cool concept.
Tapos nabuhay yung mga frozen na Martians.
Malabas yung mga ano eh.
We are not the
Si
same.
John Cena.
Nandun na bigla. You can't see me. I can't breathe. I'm dying.
Pero yeah, mind-boggling talaga. That would be the living epitome of all my science fiction dreams if we would start colonizing even the moon. I would be so amazed.
Moon lang eh. Ako actually sa lifetime natin, maabutan lang natin yung first moon base.
Tama.
Ano na yun eh, hope, malaking hope na yun in the future na alam kong yung mga apo natin, may chance na pag nawasak yung Earth, may chance silang buhay pa rin eh.
Magiging industriya siya, no? Like moon mining. Like people would
Kung sino yung
penetrate
unang
to the
maging
moon.
miners
Oh, man.
ng mga asteroids, sila yung unang magiging pinakamayayaman na interplanetary humans.
Pero yun nga, the consequences of being laborers outside of Earth would mean a divergence from the human species. Yung nangyari sa the expanse, when you become a laborer outside of Earth, so you're expected to live and work there for months on end. Magbabago talaga yung
Lalo
katawan
na
mo.
pag kunyari sa
Katawan.
asteroid belt ka tumira kasi nga yung gravity. Magiging may isang episode, sorry spoiler. So kung ayaw nyong ma-spoil, skip nyo na lang tong part na to. May isang episode doon na ginagamit nilang torture yung gravity sa mga belters nga tawag nila doon kasi sa
Kahit
mga
sa yung mga Martians din, ginamit din nila.
Pero kasi yung Martians dahil nga may technology sila, nakakapag-training yung mga tao na importante lang naman kasi yung pinapadala nila sa Earth. So sila nakakapag-train sila para doon sa gravity ng Earth. Pero yung mga Martians, sinasabi nila na yung gravity ng Earth para siyang parusa eh. Kasi nga, ever-present siya na pinapahirapan ka lang niya. Tapos yung mga Earthlings wala lang. Normal lang.
Yun. Yeah. Yeah, yun. I think when that happens, that is the divergence of humans into different species of humans. And kasi when you live out there, your body will adapt,
Tama.
it will evolve, and then
Yung mga belters, mukha na silang alien eh.
Oh, and
Ang
then-
haba na ng limbs nila eh.
and then when you reproduce, yung adaptations ng body mo will most likely go down to your your
Yun yung nakaka-intrigue dun eh. Kasi yung skeletons, given na yun. Pero paano yung internal organs? Paano magbabago yun?
Oh.
Mag-a-adjust pa talaga. No? For sure, maraming mamatay na infants doon.
Marami. Parang ilang wave siguro yun bago may mag-survive na. Tas yun, feeling ko hindi na, ang sama sabihin nasabihin na hindi sila tao.
No, hindi na talaga eh.
Pero ang maangas dun, more na sila eh. Kasi
For sure.
kinaya nila yung harshness ng space eh.
Siguro hindi ko alam kung more, pero
More physically, hindi ko sinasabing, kasi baka utak naman yung madali.
well-adapted.
Diba?
For sure, iba na sila.
Para maging polar bears tayo. Di ba sabi na the polar bears were a gene mutation? Kasi the bears that survived into the ice age or went into the northern hemispheres where there were ice, namamatay kasi nakikita ng mga prey nila.
Tama.
So wala silang makakain kasi their prey could easily escape them. And then yung mga nag-mutate, may na bears na white.
Tama.
They were the most successful because they were harder to find.
Tama.
Yun yung nag-propagate ng species. So that's probably what's gonna happen. Yung mga tao na hindi mag-develop ng cancer, we won't die immediately out in space. The human beings that are hardier and more sturdy. Yun yung
Ang dali lang mahulog sa yung
Natural
superiority
selection.
complex pagdating dun eh. Na kasi mas kaya namin mag-survive sa space. Mas kami. Yun yung isa sa mga magiging problema eh.
Pero yun yung tama, yun yung power of natural selection.
Kaya rin maganda yung reverse Dyson something ni Elon kasi ang ginagamit niya nature.
yes.
Kumbaga yung pinaka tao na sa part na yun is yung mga satellites eh. Pero at least yung ginagamit mo, nature pa rin, sunlight pa rin, sariling ice pa rin ng Mars yung ginagamit. Wala nang ibang, kesa pucha yung sinabi niyang una na bombahin ng nuclear bombs yung
Ayun,
pucha pa.
Grabe.
Mas ayaw nga natin magkalat doon tapos magkakalat tayo ng radiation
To
doon. Hindi
accelerate
wala
the
na
greenhouse
rin.
effect. Let's blow it up.
Parang
Pero
ano
malay
yun.
mo, hindi naman natin alam yung math eh. Malay mo.
Kung siguro sobrang accurate tactical nukes yun na 5 meters lang yung madadamage kasi yun lang yung may radiation, siguro okay lang. Nerd talk! So, that's it
Yeah, thanks guys.
for this episode.
Let's bring this to an end. Our first episode, we talked about so much. Fuck.
So, yun, doon natatapos yung episode namin.
Yes.
Thank you sa mga nakikinig. Siyempre, unang episode pa lang to, so medyo awkward pa kami tatlo. At siguro mas mahaba to compared sa mga susunod na episodes dahil gano'n naman tumatakbo ang mga podcasts. At yun nga, gusto namin maging parang tambay to. Ayaw namin masyadong going super professional. So, sana nag-enjoy kayo dun sa tambay natin.
Dahil di rin naman kami professional sa topics.
Kumbaga, tambay podcast lang talaga to. So, huwag kayo mag-expect ng super professional na ano.
And also because we miss each other a lot. So,
Yep.
ngayon lang kami nakita for a long time, so we have so much bottled up to say. But this was amazing, guys. We talked about things we achieved what we wanted to do. We talked about things that really excite us in the short term, the consoles this year, helping us get through 2020. Nuclear power in the Philippines. Hopefully that's a thing. I really hope that gets revived.
In the next decade, yun na naman yung
And
next
then,
decade.
pag may nuclear power ng Philippines, we can take that nuclear power and bring it to Mars, man. Let's colonize Mars. Let's
Mauna
do
na mga Pinoy dun.
it. Oo.
Philippine flag nandun, bang! De joke lang. Ibang flag na. Martian flag na.
Let's go offshore gaming.
At least alam natin di flat yung Mars. No?
De, tsaka yung mga flat earthers, pagpunta nila ng Mars, tingnan nyo yung Earth. Di ba?
Uy, may flat Mars society na.
kahit papunta sila dun on the way, gago flat talaga eh. Kahit nakikita na nila eh.
Iba lang yung orientation niya.
De, pag nagka-space elevators na, ibang topic na naman yun. Feeling ko yun na yun, matatahimik na yung mga flat earthers na yun eh.
Pero alam niyo, this 2020, just to end it on a good note, this 2020, I've rediscovered my love of chores. Na masaya ako mag-wash ng dishes, mag-wipe ng table.
Cathartic.
It's dati parang chores is just chores, diba? You do it because you have to do it. Pero now, for me, chores are a great way to just zone out from the world and just be in a silent place, and not have to deal with all the news.
Sa mga mundane na bagay, naging ano ngayon, naging cathartic.
Yeah, exactly. And
Kahit nga pagluluto din eh.
ito,
Like heartbreaks? De joke lang.
Yan na.
Hindi cathartic yan.
Ibang topic yan. Sa ibang ano yan. Sa ibang episode natin pag-uusapan ng mga ganyan.
Exciting ba yung heartbreaks?
Hindi naman tayo puro science dito at logic. May emotion din naman kami.
Pero yan. If heartbroken ka, March,
Bawal alisin yun, Marts. Bawal alisin yun.
maghugas ka ng plato.
Habang umiiyak, kasi luha mo yung ipanlinis mo nung grabe na eh.
Anyway.
But yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening to Los BandTitos.
Los BandTitos.
And your Los BandTitos would like to remind you to be responsible.
Yes.
Keep your loved ones safe as well as yourselves.
Mask.
Wear a mask. As in all things, never underestimate anyone or anything and stay balanced, my friends.
Yes.
From your Los BandTitos, adios.
Adios.
Peace out.